A month ago, Arata Todo, an ordinary Japanese person, unexpectedly passed away due to a mistake on God's part. In exchange, God offered to grant him a wish. Arata asked to live a quiet life on an uninhabited island. It was hard for him to believe that his death from overworking was God's blunder. In addition to having a body impervious to harm, Arata possessed a unique skill that allowed him to mimic any magic he witnessed. He questioned the usefulness of these skills on an empty island but didn't worry about future illnesses or injuries. However, he lacked survival skills. As he pondered whether he could endure isolation, memories of his solitary overtime work inspired him. With determination, he clenched his fist and declared his resolve to live peacefully on the island. Arata embarked on a journey through the forest and along river streams. He quickly realized that he could move more efficiently and didn't tire easily. Nevertheless, after his initial exploration, he found the island completely devoid of any other inhabitants. While considering how to secure sources of water and food, he noticed animal tracks on the ground and tree trunks. Thinking about catching an animal for sustenance, he suddenly heard a noise from behind and spotted an adorable little rabbit. Arata was taken aback to find a rabbit in this new world, and wondered if he could cook and eat it. The rabbit's adorable appearance made Arata hesitant. He reached out to grab it, but the rabbit pounced on him with surprising force. Arata managed to stay on his feet, which puzzled both him and the rabbit. It became clear that the rabbit understood Arata's words and actions. Feeling sorry for startling the rabbit, Arata threw a punch at it, but it barely grazed the rabbit as it hopped away. Suddenly, the rabbit was sent flying toward a tree. Arata was bewildered, now convinced he was in another world. Out of nowhere, a wolf appeared, fixated on the rabbit. Arata swiftly grabbed the rabbit and hurled it in the opposite direction, then sprinted to hide behind a tree. When he realized he wasn't being pursued, he breathed a sigh of relief. He understood the dangers of living alone. As night fell and the surroundings grew more perilous, Arata decided to return to the beach where he'd arrived. Night arrived, and Arata found a place to rest. He couldn't believe how tired he felt despite his ability to stay healthy and injury-free. He wondered if he could truly manage on this island alone. Then he noticed the breathtaking night sky and couldn't help but be amazed. After stargazing for a while, he believed everything would work out. With the ability to enjoy such a night sky, he decided to embrace this solitary life. This time, he was sure it wouldn't be dull and he'd have fun on the island. The following morning, Arata came to the full realization that he had indeed found himself in a completely different world. He felt relieved about possessing the extraordinary ability to remain unharmed and healthy. This ability allowed him to sleep soundly after waking up. He decided to explore the island by the beach to search for food, but instead of food, he stumbled upon a person. Not a snack, a striking red-haired woman. Arata was curious about this woman but soon realized he needed to take action. He noticed that she wasn't breathing, and he wondered if he could attempt something like what he'd seen in movies. He continued to gaze at the unconscious woman and clenched his teeth. Gently lifting her chin, Arata offered an apology in advance. He performed mouth-to-mouth resuscitation and CPR. After a short while, the woman coughed up seawater, and Arata could see that she was breathing again. He was relieved that his first aid efforts had worked, and the woman's complexion was returning to normal. Arata also noticed that the woman was quite beautiful. He began to question why a human was on this island, and noticing that the woman was wet, he decided to help her. He carefully removed her wet clothing, which made him blush when he saw her red undergarments, which matched her red hair. Arata realized he was being a bit too curious and used his jacket to cover her instead. He then hung her wet clothes out in the hot sun to dry. While he inspected her clothes, which clearly didn't belong to this world, the woman woke up. She inquired about Arata's identity and he introduced himself. Arata explained how he had saved her, and the woman comprehended. She sat up and noticed she was wearing different clothes. Blushing, Arata apologized. The woman in turn realized that she had been dressed in new attire and blushed as well. There was a brief silence and she recalled Arata's name. She thanked Arata for saving her, and her smile left him stunned. He assured her that everything was okay. Soon after, she changed into her dry clothes and Arata asked her name. She introduced herself as Reina Mistoral. Arata was curious why she was on the island, and Reina explained that she had been ordered to go to the farthest island known. Her crew encountered a severe storm while navigating. Reina then inquired about Arata's presence on the island. Arata contemplated whether to reveal his reincarnation story but decided to play it off as a random occurrence, and they both shared a laugh. Reina acknowledged that everyone had their unique stories, and what mattered to her was that Arata had saved her. Arata expressed his surprise and gratitude, suggesting they rest for a bit before looking for food and water. After a short break, they ventured through cliffs and dense forests. Strangely, it was only Reina who seemed to be getting tired. She couldn't help but notice how fit Arata was, and Arata himself found it perplexing. Reina remarked on the oddity of the island, realizing it wasn't too far from where they were dispatched. Yet the king had noticed this massive island. While Reina contemplated this, Arata spotted something and told her to wait. Wolves suddenly appeared and Arata recognized them from the previous encounter. He urged Reina to run, but she questioned why he was panicking and conjured a wind spell. With confidence, she declared herself as the great magician Reina Mistalar and sent wind blades slicing through the wolves. Arata was astonished by the display of magic. As Reina boasted, he noticed a surviving wolf behind her. Arata shielded Reina from its attack, and though he looked pained, the bite didn't seem to hurt him. Reina worriedly inquired about his condition, and Arata suggested the wolf might have been weakened by her previous attack. He decided to punch the wolf, even though he doubted it would have an effect. To his surprise, his punch sent the wolf flying into a tree, leaving both of them astonished. As the tree fell, Arata realized something based on what had happened with a rabbit earlier. Just as Reina was about to ask about Arata's identity, she noticed something behind him. She told Arata to run in the opposite direction. At that moment, Arata noticed something behind him. A massive wolf suddenly appeared, and Arata realized it was much stronger than the previous ones. Reina urged Arata to escape while she unleashed a powerful wind attack. Unfortunately, the attack had no effect on the wolf. The wolf then leaped toward Reina with its jaws wide open. Arata sprang into action to save Reina, and both of them tumbled to the ground. Reina scolded Arata for not running away, and he was surprised to learn that Reina had intended to shield him with her own body. Arata recognized how kind Reina truly was. Arata stepped forward and bravely confronted the wolf as his adversary. He knew he might not survive, but he was determined to make the most of his second chance at life, which he believed was a gift from a higher power. Despite Reina's attempts to stop him, Arata wanted to create a path for her to escape. He told the wolf not to underestimate humans and delivered a powerful punch that sent the huge wolf flying. Seeing the wolf soar through the air, Arata was astonished and realized that his body, which couldn't get sick or injured, was an incredibly potent ability. Arata turned to Reina, who was left speechless by the astounding spectacle. He could only sigh, knowing that many interesting things awaited them from that point onward. Arata was really surprised by the special abilities that God had granted him. At that moment, Reina, who was with him, mentioned that she had never seen a person make a monster fly before. She started to question whether Arata was a normal human being. Arata tried to explain that it was due to magic, but Reina remained skeptical. She even mentioned that even if she used strengthening magic on herself, she couldn't do what Arata did. She began to wonder if Arata's magic was more potent than her own, even though she was a 7-star magician with great pride. This made Arata contemplate whether he should be honest with Reina about his reincarnation. Seeing his troubled expression, Reina realized she had been too harsh with her questions and apologized to Arata. She didn't intend to interrogate him and was only surprised. She remembered that Arata had saved her from a wolf. Arata, in turn, felt flustered, thinking he would react the same way in Reina's situation. However, as an adult, he tried to reassure Reina and asked her not to look sad because he wasn't upset with her. Reina noticed that Arata was treating her like a child, but she didn't mind at all. Arata then asked her if being a 7-star magician was impressive. Reina reacted with offense, wondering if Arata had been isolated for not knowing about it. Arata explained that he had lost his memory, and Reina found his excuse convenient. She went on to explain that a 7-star magician was a title given to the most powerful magicians in the country, capable of facing a dragon. She proudly stated that she was the youngest to achieve this title. However, Reina felt conflicted after witnessing Arata's incredible physical abilities, sparking her curiosity about him. Arata realized that things might not go well if they went to the mainland. Suddenly, a gust of wind interrupted their conversation, reminding them that they had been searching for water. Arata heard something and pointed in a direction. He had caught the faint sound of flowing water. The two continued their journey, taking breaks along the way. Before long, they stumbled upon a clean stream, and Reina was impressed that Arata had been right about the water source. She thought about the distance they had covered and wondered if Arata really had heard the water. After confirming her question, Arata wondered if the water was safe to drink. He knew he'd be okay drinking it because of his exceptional body, but it could be problematic for Reina. Arata took a sip of the water down to his throat and felt refreshed. He then informed Reina that the water was safe to drink. However, Reina was preoccupied with her outdoor kitchen setup. She chopped some ingredients and started making soup with various seasonings. Arata tried to strike up a conversation with her, but Reina was completely absorbed in her task. Her intense concentration surprised Arata, and it was clear that she was highly skilled. Arata asked her about where she obtained her cooking equipment. Perplexed, Reina explained that she used her storage magic. Even though Arata claimed he understood, Reina could tell he didn't quite grasp it. She decided to show him how storage magic worked, and explained that the storage space varied based on the user's magical power. In her case, Reina's storage magic was as vast as a mansion. She then told Arata to relax while she cooked. Arata found the concept of storage magic fascinating and wished he had such an ability. Something suddenly appeared behind him, and he reached out to it. Arata realized it was a form of storage magic. He remembered that God had granted him the skill to copy magic upon seeing it. Reina checked on her cooking, and Arata felt flustered as the storage magic vanished just in time. He tried to play ignorant since he knew he'd be in trouble if Reina saw or heard about it. Reina then asked Arata to hold the pot so she could create a table using her magic. She focused her magical energy on the ground, and a table quickly materialized out of thin air. She retrieved some utensils from her storage and the dining table was elegantly set. Arata was impressed, but Reina mentioned that she was used to dining outside, being an S-rank adventurer herself. Reina served the delicious-looking soup on the table. Arata's face and stomach reacted simultaneously. Reina couldn't help but laugh and told him to start eating. Arata agreed, just as a girl who had mysteriously taken a seat at the table chimed in. The meal continued in silence, and Arata began to wonder about the girl's identity. He noticed her fluffy ears and 9 tails. The girl tasted the food and enthusiastically praised Reina's cooking. Arata wondered where she had come from and how to handle the situation. He had discovered Reina, who was trembling in fear in her seat. Arata wondered what might be troubling her, but Reina insisted it was nothing. He could see that Reina was upset while gazing at the intrusive girl, and wondered if there was a connection between them. As they watched the food disappear quickly, Arata took the girl aside and reminded her not to eat without asking others first. Reina became nervous and told Arata it was all right, but he disagreed as he wanted to teach the child proper manners. Strangely, the girl seemed happy in Arata's grasp, which made Reina anxious. She asked Arata to let go of the girl, and he complied. Arata asked the girl for her name and she introduced herself as Luna. Arata crouched down to her eye level and informed her that she had just eaten his lunch. Luna realized her mistake and apologized. Arata gently patted her head and assured her that it was fine since she apologized in the end. Luna couldn't help but smile, mirroring Arata's warm expression. Arata then checked if Reina had enough food and she mentioned having a year's supply, anticipating a long journey. Arata apologized for not considering Luna's needs and asked Reina to prepare food for her as well. Reina was surprised, but seeing Luna's hopeful look, she smiled and agreed to cook for her. Luna thanked Reina and referred to her as if she were an older sister. Reina's expression lightened compared to before, and she asked Luna to wait a bit. Arata was grateful, but he realized that his protagonist status might be at risk at that point. Luna then asked for his name, and he introduced himself. Arata remembered praying to be sent to a suitable human-free island, so he decided not to rely too much on Reina. When he saw Luna, he wondered if there were other beastmen like her on the island, and asked her if anyone else lived there. Luna confirmed that there were members of the Godly Beast Tribe, Demon Tribe, Ancient Dragon Tribe, and the Vampire Tribe. Learning this, Arata accepted the news that there were no humans on the island. After they finished their meal, Luna left. In the afternoon, Reina set up a large tent that would serve as their base. She then told Arata that they needed to have a conversation about Luna. Reina explained that she was one of the 7-star magicians and was on a quest to find the most isolated island. Their mission was to find a medicine that grants immortality. Arata wondered why Reina used the plural pronoun. She clarified that she had brought a few knights with her but expected that she was the only survivor. The two became silent for a while. Reina then talked about how the island they were on had to be her destination based on Luna's description. Arata agreed that the tribes Luna had mentioned were very powerful. Arata thought Luna was just an ordinary kid, but Reina corrected him, saying Luna had more magical ability than she did. Arata remembered how Reina had been nervous around Luna. Reina said that Luna could have single-handedly destroyed the mainland if she wanted to. Arata argued that Luna wouldn't do that, but Reina gave him an example of Luna's strength. Arata fell silent for a moment, pondering the existence of demons. Reina said that demons were just myths lost in history and they roamed the lands before humans existed. There were stories of dragons wiping out cities and vampires being creatures of imagination. Reina was trying to say that they had encountered a creature from these ancient myths. Arata realized that the island was truly extraordinary. Reina warned Arata to be cautious of other dangerous creatures on the island besides Luna until they could find a way to escape. She wanted both of them, as humans, to figure out how to leave the island. Arata wondered about the medicine, but Reina explained that they didn't even know the island existed, and her team had already been wiped out. Reina needed more people to help them escape, but Arata didn't plan to involve outsiders because he had decided to live on the island. For now, Arata agreed to help Reina and reminded her they needed a boat. Reina believed they could obtain one if Arata worked hard. Arata, with his seemingly indestructible body and the ability to replicate others' magic, believed he could survive. However, he and Reina had different perspectives about the island. Arata planned to help Reina until she escaped, and he was determined to work hard for her sake. The next morning, Arata, feeling sleep-deprived, woke up unexpectedly sharing a tent with a girl. Reina greeted him and noticed the dark circles under his eyes. Arata excused himself to wash his face, hoping for a peaceful day. However, Luna suddenly appeared, and this time she brought an imposing man with beast ears. Arata wondered who the man was, and the man inquired if Arata was the newcomer. Arata couldn't help but wonder if it would be a peaceful day for him. Arata sensed the beastman before him had great strength. The beastman named Elga from Luna's tribe introduced himself. Arata did the same. Elga then inquired about the girl inside the tent, who was preparing her magic. He expressed his willingness to fight but advised Reina to stop her magical preparations, as he wasn't concerned about her skills. An anxious Reina emerged from the tent, and Arata realized Elga was incredibly strong when he saw a 7-star magician like Reina looking scared. Arata stepped forward to shield Reina, who was surprised by his actions. Luna intervened and scolded Elga, reminding him of their promise not to fight. Elga shifted the blame to Reina and Arata, but Luna pointed out that it was Elga's intimidating demeanor that had started the conflict. Recognizing that Elga wasn't an enemy, Arata politely inquired about his purpose in approaching them. Elga asked Arata to address him informally and informed the two humans that they were on his territory. Arata apologized, explaining that they had just arrived on the island and were unfamiliar with the customs. Elga understood, as he hadn't expected humans to come to Arcadia, an island created by the gods. Arata recalled Reina's mission, and Elga cautioned them not to harm the forest or engage in any wrongdoing on his territory. He also warned them that the demon and dragon tribes might be less hospitable. Arata wondered if Elga could provide more information, but Elga was initially reluctant. However, he acknowledged the complexity of two humans roaming the island without knowledge and agreed to fetch a map for them. Elga departed, leaving Arata impressed by his willingness to help. Luna reassured Arata that despite his rough exterior, Elga was a kind person. At that moment, they noticed Reina feeling unwell near the tent. Arata quickly supported her and asked if she was okay. Reina explained that her body was trembling due to the massive concentration of mana she had encountered. Seeing Reina's condition, Arata wondered if it was a common reaction for magicians when meeting island residents. Luna looked sad and questioned if it was her fault, but Reina assured her that neither she nor Elga were to blame. Reina blamed herself for not being strong and told Luna not to look sad. While observing the two girls talking, Arata noticed that Reina never held anyone else responsible. She always took the blame. This inspired him, and he couldn't help but feel admiration for his younger partner. Shortly after, Elga returned with a map but became upset when he saw the others enjoying food while he spent an hour retrieving it. Reina kindly offered Elga some food and he eagerly sat down. They served a dish with meat and vegetables, and Elga couldn't help but exclaim at how delicious it tasted. Arata wondered if the beast tribe had a tendency to be loud while eating. After the meal, Elga and Luna took a nap since they were full. Meanwhile, Arata and Reina washed the dishes by a nearby stream. Arata couldn't help but wonder about the relationship between the two beastmen, considering Luna looked like a fox and Elga like a wolf. Suddenly, Reina thanked Arata. He thought she was referring to washing the dishes, but she clarified that she was grateful for him protecting her from Elga earlier. Arata casually remembered the incident, saying everything was fine because Elga turned out not to be an enemy. However, Reina explained that wasn't her point. No other human had ever protected her, and Arata's actions touched her heart. Arata was surprised, and Reina suggested they return to their tent. Arata expected to learn more from Elga and Luna. Elga soon showed them the complete map of Arcadia, pointing out the territories of each tribe. He explained that the tribes didn't fight much because they knew it would lead to losses. He also mentioned the Grand Elves who stayed in their territory but had more interactions lately. Arata wondered if all tribes got along, considering there were no conflicts. Elga disagreed, saying they didn't fight for survival, they just weren't interested in fighting. Arata was initially scared but now felt that he could live peacefully on the island. He asked Elga for advice on finding a good place to stay. Elga was surprised and questioned if Arata was serious, claiming there was no place on the island suitable for a weak human. However, Arata was confident in his abilities. Suddenly they heard a loud noise and Elga got excited, knowing it was an approaching Emperor Boar. Luna was excited too, anticipating a feast. Arata asked Elga for an explanation and Elga briefly described it as a massive piece of meat that tasted great. He mentioned that it was rare to encounter because it lived underground. Arata accepted their simple explanation, but Reina recalled a time when a monstrous boar had appeared in a town, requiring all the country's knights to mobilize. The monstrous Emperor Boar charged toward them, and Arata complained that it was too big. Elga warned Luna to step aside. Luna, frustrated that adults always got the best parts, complained. They argued until they decided to compete. The two beastmen braced for the boar's charge but got pulled along instead. Arata grew anxious as the boar raced like a massive dump truck. Reina pondered what to do. Arata, covering for Reina, trusted the powers granted by God. He reassured Reina and the boar crashed into them. Arata managed to halt the boar in its tracks, surprising everyone. A smile crossed Arata's face as he discovered his true power. Elga wondered if Arata was truly human, and Luna found him impressive. Arata declared the meat was now his since he'd stopped the boar by himself. As he prepared to punch, he apologized to the boar for making it his lunch. His punch sent the huge monster flying. Arata claimed that Emperor Boar was his, but everyone couldn't find the monster. Arata realized he'd hit too hard and despair filled everyone as the precious meat vanished. Reina sighed, seeing that human common sense had disappeared. While Arata looked at the aftermath caused by the Emperor Boar, Elga and Luna started complaining to him. Arata said sorry and Reina asked the two to calm down and forgive Arata because she would cook food for them later. Elga forgave Arata for now, and Luna told him to thank Reina for it. Arata showed his thanks to Reina. Elga then continued the conversation, saying that the place they were staying was safe, and there were plenty of fields for food. Arata was surprised that Elga was letting him stay, but Elga said Arata wasn't a human. Arata claimed he was human, but Elga pointed out that no human could have stopped an Emperor Boar and sent it flying with one punch. Arata suddenly felt sad, losing his identity as a human, but Elga told him that he found him interesting and Luna liked him. He was allowed to stay, and Arata thanked Elga. Elga wondered about Reina. Reina decided to stay beside Arata because she couldn't survive alone on the island. Luna was happy because they could keep playing. Seeing Luna and Reina smiling, Arata was glad they were enjoying themselves. Then Arata noticed something in the sky. He asked Luna what it was. Elga suddenly got flustered. Seeing a huge pair of claws and wings, a huge black dragon suddenly appeared, surprising the two humans. Elga couldn't believe someone from the dragon tribe had come, and it was Bahamut's kid. Arata then noticed the boar that the dragon was carrying, and it was the one he had punched earlier. The dragon glared at them and dropped the Emperor Boar like a bomb. Arata told everyone to duck down and he trusted God's blessings once again. Arata caught the huge Emperor Boar with ease and even got the time to check on everyone's condition. Elga knew that Arata was definitely not a human. Suddenly the dragon started charging toward them. Arata threw aside the boar, and Elga wondered if he could stop the dragon. Arata was confident about it, and Elga trusted him while he acted on his own. Elga had begun to charge his power as the dragon approached. Luna cheered them on, while Reina watched nervously from the sidelines. Arata readied himself to confront the dragon, but suddenly a cloud of smoke enveloped the creature, and it called out to Arata. Out of the blue, a girl landed on Arata and praised him for proposing to her. Everyone was too shocked to speak, witnessing the dragon transform into a human girl. The dragon girl continued to affectionately embrace Arata, calling him her husband. Arata thanked her for her kind words but couldn't help but wonder what was going on. He turned to Reina for answers, but the archmage had fallen to her knees once more. Arata rushed to check on her, and Reina admitted she had used too much magic power again. Arata realized that the combined magic power of Alaga and the dragon girl had been too much for Reina. He gently lifted her in his arms, and although Reina tried to communicate, our protagonist decided to listen to her later. Arata quickly left the others behind, carrying Reina in a princess-like manner. They soon reached a spot near a stream, where Arata set Reina down next to a tree. Reina struggled to catch her breath and Arata grew concerned. He embraced her and encouraged her to take slow, deep breaths. They remained silent until Reina calmed down and fell asleep. Arata was relieved that Reina was okay despite the unexpected turn of events. He then noticed something in the bushes and Luna emerged, inquiring about Reina's well-being. Arata asked Luna to approach slowly. Luna checked on Reina and worried that her presence might have harmed Reina and the others. Arata smiled and assured Luna that Reina enjoyed their company. He advised Luna to control her magic when near Reina to avoid any issues. Luna agreed and Arata asked her to watch over Reina for a while. Arata wanted to know why the dragon had come to them. Shortly after, he discovered the dragon girl being watched over by Elga. He informed Elga that Reina had finally calmed down. Arata then inquired about the dragon girl's name. She introduced herself as Teltu, a descendant of Bahamut and a member of the dragon tribe. Arata recognized the name Bahamut from games and comics and assumed Teltu was a powerful dragon. Arata introduced himself as the island's newcomer, and Teltu commented that his name sounded strong. This puzzled Arata, who wondered why Teltu kept referring to him as her husband. Teltu thought it was a silly question and said she had accepted Arata's brave proposal. Arata was taken aback and insisted he never proposed to her. Teltu explained that Arata had sent them an Emperor Boar, a tradition in the dragon tribe where a man presents a powerful monster infused with magic to a girl. Teltu believed Arata was strong, so she considered him her husband. Arata asked for more clarification, and Teltu recounted that she was napping when the Emperor Boar suddenly landed on her. She traced it back to Arata. Dragons only took strong individuals as their husbands, so she got excited when she met him. Arata questioned why Teltu had thrown the monster back to them, and she explained it was a signal that they could raise a family and share meals together. Arata realized the whole situation was a misunderstanding. After he explained everything, Teltu looked disappointed, and realized her joy at finding someone stronger had been unfounded. She knew no one would marry her in the first place. Elga was becoming irritated, but Arata intervened. Upon observing Teltu, Arata realized she might be an outcast from their tribe, and he felt terrible for what he had done. He then had an idea when he looked at the Emperor Boar. Arata called out to Teltu and asked her to share a meal with them. He referred to her as his friend, which made the dragon girl happy. She mentioned her cooking skills, and Arata left the task to her. The three of them decided to check on Reina to ask how they should cook the pork. Arata, Elga, and Teltu had met up with Reina and Luna. Reina looked well and greeted Elga. Elga calmly said sorry for what he did earlier. Reina said it was okay, as it was their normal way of life and her fault for not being used to it. Elga then smiled and told Arata that Reina was also strong like him. Reina looked at them and asked who the little girl was. But she quickly realized that Teltu was the dragon from before. Teltu still introduced herself as Arata's wife. Arata could see Reina's sharp gaze. He explained everything from the beginning and Reina understood. She wondered if Arata was favored by Loki, the god of mischief. Reina tried to talk to Teltu formally, but Teltu asked Reina to be casual since they were in the same situation. Arata was surprised by Teltu's straightforward words. Reina told Teltu that she had only met Arata 2 days before and they weren't lovers yet. "You heard her, boys. Yet," Teltu exclaimed, mentioning that she had only met Arata hours ago and that women instinctively wanted a strong guy to protect them. Reina clarified that she wasn't in a relationship with Arata, but Luna already thought they were, as Arata had carried her earlier. Reina felt flustered. Elga changed the topic and reminded them about the huge pile of pork. Flustered, Reina led the way back to the camp. Everyone was in awe of the massive boar. Reina asked Elga to remove the meat after she cut open the stomach. Teltu held up the emperor boar for Reina to cut. Reina claimed that she had been acting weak since coming to the island. It was her time to show off her status as a magician and used a powerful spell to open the boar's stomach. Blood started pouring out and it was Elga's turn. He leapt toward the boar and pulled out its organs with his bare hand. He continued to cut the meat using his bare hands. Arata was impressed and Luna claimed that Elga was the best hunter in their tribe. Shortly afterward, Elga declared that he had finished. Reina handed him a towel to wipe off the blood. Arata expressed his gratitude for Elga's efforts. Nonetheless, Reina mentioned that they had an excess of meat. Arata inquired if she could use magic to manage it, but Reina explained that it wouldn't fit in her storage magic. It was then that Arata had a realization. Arata suggested putting the remaining meat into his magical storage, which left Reina puzzled. He then pictured storing the boar's meat and successfully did so. The pork disappeared from the field and the people on the island praised Arata. Reina remained silent and Arata was curious about her unusual behavior. Reina's expression turned dark as she wondered how someone like Arata could use storage magic. She exclaimed that Arata's storage capacity exceeded that of a 7-star magician like her. Arata decided to act like he didn't know much about it to avoid further questions from Reina. Soon the group began grilling the meat and everyone marveled at the sight. Reina informed them that the meat was cooked and ready to be eaten. People eagerly devoured the food and Reina had to ask them to slow down because there was so much meat. Elga and Arata even argued over the larger cuts of meat. Meanwhile, Luna and Teltu savored the meat with Reina's homemade sweet sauce. It was then that Arata noticed what Reina was cooking, the best part of the boar, a high-quality fillet that practically melted in your mouth. Arata realized no one recognized its value and attempted to take it for himself, but Reina stopped him with her tongs and insisted that he share with everyone. The feast continued and Reina beamed like a mother feeding her children. After a relaxing siesta, the beasts departed, and Arata and Reina bid them farewell. That night, they had a campfire under the starry sky. They both exclaimed how hectic their day had been. The silence lingered until Reina smiled and thanked Arata for saving her once again. Arata felt guilty that Teltu had come along but also expressed his gratitude for Reina's cooking and the tent she provided. He expressed his desire to live on the island and vowed to use his strength to protect Reina. He believed himself useless if he couldn't safeguard her. Reina reflected on the word protect and burst into laughter. She shared that she had never received such treatment before. She had always been treated like a tool or a monster. Arata realized how difficult it must have been for her and wondered if all 7-star magicians were treated that way. Although Reina was the weakest among them, she explained that they were considered higher beings, and no one thought of protecting someone like her. Arata felt sympathetic toward her, and Reina pointed out that he was different from the norm in the first place. She said how the island residents they had met were monstrous and could potentially cause disasters in human-inhabited land. She mentioned that Arata was stronger than those monsters, and no human could match his abilities. Arata was surprised by her words. After some thought, Reina unexpectedly asked about Arata's true identity, even though she hadn't planned to. This led to a long, contemplative silence between them. Arata remembered that Reina was the first person he had met in this new world, and realized that she was a trustworthy individual. However, he couldn't help but wonder if she would accept the truth about his reincarnation. He feared she might consider him crazy or lose all trust in him. Despite his anxiety, Arata decided he didn't want to lie to Reina. After a moment of silence, he mustered the courage to confess that he wasn't originally from her world. Reina was left stunned and speechless by this revelation. Arata continued to explain how he had died once, encountered God, and then found himself on the island with newfound powers. He nervously clenched his hands as he shared all these details. After a brief silence, Reina admitted that it all made sense to her. Arata asked if she truly believed him, and she affirmed her belief. Seeing Arata's embarrassment, Reina giggled and said that although it was hard to believe he had met God, The extraordinary things she had witnessed since meeting him convinced her. She pointed out that a regular human couldn't throw a massive monster into the sky, and Arata's abilities further convinced her that he was from another world. Arata felt a mix of relief and disappointment. Reina assured him that she now understood him completely and praised his hard work. She then asked Arata to continue working together from that point on. Arata had initially expected her not to believe him, so he felt grateful for her acceptance and made the same request of her. A week had passed since Arata began living on the island, and he was starting to get used to it. He is no longer worried about survival, thanks to Reina, who had taught him various types of magic. Arata realized he had become dependent on Reina and wanted to find a way to help her with her workload. One day, as Arata was pondering this, he heard a familiar sound and saw a cute rabbit. He remembered encountering one when he first arrived on the island and regretted scaring it away. This time, the rabbit approached Arata and tried to tackle him, but it had no effect. Arata petted the rabbit and told it to calm down. When Reina came out of the tent and saw the rabbit, she wanted to pet it too, but the rabbit struggled. Arata flicked its forehead as a gentle punishment, and the rabbit fainted, which worried Arata. Reina asked if Arata was familiar with this type of rabbit, and he mentioned they existed in the world he came from, where they were treated as pets. Reina explained that in their world, these rabbits were considered disaster-class monsters, which were difficult to handle. The 7-star magicians and high-ranked adventurers were dispatched to deal with them. Arata was surprised, as rabbits on Earth were commonly seen as pets. He now understood why the rabbits had been confused when their attacks had no effect on him. Suddenly, someone familiar shouted from a distance, and Teltu appeared, playfully tackling Arata. She was impressed that Arata was unharmed after their collision. Reina welcomed Teltu and asked why she had come. Teltu replied that she had come to play and was amazed that Arata had captured the agile monster that even someone like her couldn't catch. She said that the rabbit was strong too. Suddenly, someone familiar was rushing toward them and Luna accidentally bumped into Arata. Teltu greeted them, but Luna's presence made her feel shy, and she hid behind Arata. Arata was curious about what was bothering Teltu. Then Reina greeted Luna, patted her, and praised her for her polite greeting. Teltu asked Arata to do the same for her, and he gently patted Teltu's head. When they saw Teltu smile, Arata and Reina couldn't help but smile too. Later, in the woods, Arata suggested a hunting competition. He teamed up with Teltu while Reina and Luna formed another team. The goal was to see which team could catch the most prey. After both teams exchanged cheers and encouragement, the competition began. Team Reina and Luna went after monsters here and there, but Team Arata and Teltu were having a hard time finding anything. They could see the other team doing well, especially Reina, who was a former S-ranked adventurer. Arata was disappointed that they couldn't find any monsters on their side. Teltu then suggested doing something, and Arata started to scan the area. His lack of experience in hunting limited his contribution to the team. He wondered how he could use his abilities to help. Eventually, he realized something and told Teltu to trust him. Arata sat down, relying on the body that God had given him. He focused on his hearing to detect distant sounds and extended his hearing senses throughout the dense woods until he heard faint footsteps. Arata informed Teltu of the direction, and the two of them sprinted in that direction. They soon stumbled upon a group of rabbits, but the creatures began to scatter as they approached. Arata knew that the rabbits would usually attack him, but Teltu's dragon aura frightened them away. Not wanting the rabbits to escape, Arata picked up a stone and hurled it at one of the fleeing rabbits, incapacitating it. This made the other rabbits anxious. Suddenly, Teltu appeared in front of them with lightning speed and caught the remaining rabbits. Teltu had managed to catch only one rabbit and the other one kept running away. Arata didn't want it to escape, so he reached out and touched the ground. He tried to use the earth magic Reina had taught him, envisioning how the dirt would form a barrier. Suddenly, a wall appeared in front of the fast-moving rabbit, but it remained determined. Teltu insisted that the rabbit could still break through the wall, so the rabbit charged at it and headbutted. However, the damage bounced back, and the rabbit couldn't destroy the wall. Arata was pleased to have caught the remaining rabbit after seeing the other one fail. Teltu was bewildered, and Arata wondered what was wrong. Teltu then realized that Arata was not like everyone else. Soon they returned to their camp where Luna greeted them and praised their hunting efforts. Elga was already there to prepare the rabbits for a meal. Teltu, however, felt uneasy. Remembering how Elga had once called her a weak dragon, Arata recalled that Teltu could communicate with him and Reina but struggled with Luna and Elga. She had been fine during their first encounter, driven by adrenaline, but now she was becoming shy around others. Arata understood that it was challenging for an ancient dragon to make friends on their own. Luna asked them how many rabbits they had caught. Seeing Luna's outgoing nature, Arata used this opportunity to encourage Teltu to interact. Teltu felt a bit flustered but managed to proudly announce that they had captured 3 rabbits. Luna was impressed and held Teltu's hand, inquiring about how they managed to catch the fast and strong rabbits. Arata decided to give Teltu a nudge, hoping she'd improve her social skills and not be seen as a weak dragon. Teltu, gaining confidence, told Luna that they were going to start training for rabbit hunting. Luna was thrilled, and Teltu smiled in return. Arata was pleased with the progress. Luna then told Arata that she would spend time with Teltu before lunch. The two girls left the camp hand in hand. It had been a month since Arata had arrived on the island. Elga reminded him not to go to the southern part of the island because the demon and dragon tribes would run wild there. He was confident Arata would be fine, but more worried about Reina. Arata wondered where the high elves lived, but Elga told him they liked to keep to themselves. Elves wouldn't attack anyone outright, but they might react differently to a human. Luna also mentioned that spirits lived in the area. After hearing all this, Arata realized there was a hierarchy in each tribe. For example, in the beast tribe, those who weren't named godly beasts lived normally. High elves governed the elves and great spirits governed the spirits and were treated like gods. Arata decided to visit the beast tribe first. Elga advised him to bring a souvenir like the emperor boar to be welcomed warmly. Arata asked if there was a way to leave the island, and Elga quickly responded that there was none. The island was surrounded by a powerful barrier, and only a top-skilled mage could enter. According to legends, the barrier was created by God to keep monsters from getting out. All beings that could wreak havoc in the outside world were confined to the island. Arata realized this was an island you could enter but not leave. God's island, Arceus. Elga claimed that people outside could only live peacefully because they were trapped on the island. Arata saw that Reina wasn't supposed to be involved in this matter. Since he reincarnated, Arata wanted to explore the island, but he didn't want to drag Reina along. She had been helping him since they arrived, so he vowed to help her escape the island safely and live peacefully there. He knew he needed to work hard to achieve those two goals. That night, Arata told Reina about his decision to visit the beast tribe and get permission to live on their territory. Reina wondered if it was necessary, but Arata explained that they had been living in the area without permission, and he wanted to make it official. Since they were on the island, they might as well get everyone's approval. Reina giggled because she knew Arata would think of something like that. He just wanted to visit their landlord, and Reina decided to follow him. After their talk, Arata wondered who would take a bath first. Reina claimed she was moving a lot and wanted to be first. While Reina was bathing, Arata kept an eye on the surroundings for trespassers. With his powerful body from God, he used his senses to scan the area. Suddenly, he felt a chilling aura in the sky like he'd never felt before. He saw something coming and a silhouette appeared in front of the moonlight. The girl giggled after finally finding the infiltrators on the island. She claimed that she smelled something delicious from Arata's camp and continued laughing as Arata stared at her. Realizing the girl had the eyes of a predator, Arata sensed she was on the same level as Teltu and sat at the top of the food chain. The girl landed on the ground and introduced herself as Wilhelmina Vermilion Varheim. She said she'd been living on the island for a long time. Arata introduced himself and admitted he didn't know how he ended up on the island. Weil was surprised but started giggling again, as she realized interesting things were about to happen on the otherwise boring island. She then looked at the bathhouse and asked to taste the delicious scent she had smelled. She formed a huge block of ice out of nowhere and hurled it at the bathhouse. Arata was surprised and used his body to protect the bathhouse, which caught Wilhelmina off guard. She couldn't believe how fast Arata was in blocking her attack. Arata confidently claimed he was skilled. Wilhelmina hadn't expected Arata to be this strong, but she wasn't bothered. She conjured more ice spears out of thin air, wondering if Arata could defend against them all. Arata deftly blocked most of the ice spears with his speed and sturdy body, but one got past him, damaging the bathhouse. He rushed to Reina's aid. Reina shouted at Arata not to come closer. The mist dissipated, revealing Reina's attractive figure. Arata froze in front of her. Reina started crying and asked Arata not to look, to which he apologized. But when he heard Wilhelmina giggling, he snapped back to the reality of their fight. Wilhelmina laughed and encouraged them to continue arguing because she found their embarrassment delicious. Reina finally noticed Wilhelmina, and Arata realized that Wilhelmina might be a high vampire. He asked Wilhelmina for an explanation, and she clarified that high vampires fed on emotions instead of blood. She loved the taste of shame and considered boredom a threat to immortality. In essence, she feasted on Reina's embarrassment and enjoyed their romantic comedy moment. Arata then realized that Wilhelmina's earlier ice attacks had been relatively weak. If she wanted to harm them, she could have used more power. But Wilhelmina wasn't interested in hurting them. She just craved the taste of embarrassment. While still talking, Wilhelmina casually dodged a wind blade from Reina. Reina, filled with anger, declared she'd never forgive Wilhelmina, and continued launching wind blades. Wilhelmina savored the taste of Reina's anger, as her body seemed to shatter into pieces. But then, those pieces turned into bats and reformed Wilhelmina, unharmed. She giggled, making it clear that she wasn't an easy target, and thanked Reina for the treat. Having enjoyed her meal, she bid them farewell and asked Reina to serve up more shame next time, her favorite flavor. Arata realized that his hope for a peaceful life was still a long way off, as someone had managed to stir Reina's emotion. Shortly after, Arata and Reina followed Luna to the Beast Tribe's village. Everyone in the village was outside working in the fields. Arata and Reina were impressed by what they saw. Arata had expected the place to resemble something from a comic book, but it looked quite normal. Elga approached them with a beast woman by his side. Arata thanked Elga for the warm welcome and wondered who the woman was. Elga, a bit embarrassed, introduced her as his wife, Olivia. Arata and Reina also introduced themselves, and Arata was surprised to learn that Elga was married. Olivia had heard about the two humans from Luna, whom she had been taking care of. She had noticed how Elga often left on his own, and she had assumed he was being unfaithful. As a fish-type beast woman, she had planned to confront him and drag him to the depths of the ocean as punishment. The couple decided to give Arata and Reina a tour of the village. While walking around, Arata noticed that they were attracting a lot of attention. Reina also observed that the other villagers didn't look as strong as Elga. Elga explained that the beastmen had exceptionally long lifespans and inherited features from their ancestors. The ones who appeared normal had lost the powers they inherited. Arata wondered if it was similar in the central village, and Elga confirmed that the normal ones lived below, while the powerful ones lived in the upper region. Reina realized that they had a social structure resembling royalty and peasants. Elga mentioned that it wasn't something they initiated, as normal people had started revering them as gods. The powerful beastmen hunted in the forest, while the weaker ones worked as farmers, cultivating rice and vegetables. Luna said that this division of roles kept their village running smoothly. Arata couldn't help but feel sympathy for the normal beastmen. They were not strong, and their survival depended on staying close to the more powerful one. It was the harsh reality of their world. The group eventually reached the central village, where Luna and Elga resided. In the center stood a mansion. Arata was curious about the mansion, and Elga explained that it belonged to their leader. Unlike them, their leader had been in charge for generations, going back to Elga's ancestors. Luna spoke highly of the leader's strength, and Elga revealed that she wanted to meet Arata and Reina. Inside the mansion, a woman greeted them with confidence. She was pleased to meet the foreigners that Elga had mentioned and found them interesting. Arata and Reina could sense her commanding presence. She introduced herself as a phoenix-type beastman and the leader of all the beastmen. Arata and Reina introduced themselves and mentioned how Elga and the others had taken care of them. The leader encouraged them not to be too formal and to relax. In the past, she had been called God or Immortal, but now she went by the name Suzaku, which meant vermilion bird or phoenix. She also preferred not to be called boss. Elga chimed in, noting that Suzaku had always been the leader since he was born. Suzaku wondered where Elga got his boldness and playfully blamed herself for raising him. Seeing that they were different types of beastmen, Arata assumed that they weren't blood-related but rather a family bound by trust. She then requested that they continue to get along with Elga. She remembered something Luna had told her and said that Arata and Reina seemed trustworthy. She created a small fireball and tossed it to Arata. Everyone was shocked as Arata caught it. The small fireball suddenly erupted into massive flames from Arata's hands. They were all too stunned to speak as Arata's hand continued to burn. Suzaku burst into laughter. Reina was astonished because the fire had at least 10 times the magic power she possessed. Even though Suzaku had thrown it casually, Arata made it look weak despite catching it. However, Arata was more impressed that such a small fireball could contain so much magic power. Arata calmly extinguished the flame, and Elga became angry at Suzaku. Suzaku then moved forward and casually mentioned that she liked Arata because she hadn't been able to go all out with someone for ages. The two glared at each other until Suzaku decided to leave because she was tired. She then asked Elga to give their guests a tour. Elga apologized, but Arata didn't mind, as he was getting used to the island's eccentricity. The tour continued as usual until everyone gathered at the central plaza. Suzaku introduced the guests Elga had brought with him, and called Arata a monster because he was unaffected by her flames. The cheers from everyone embarrassed Arata. Luna suddenly came over and started bonding with Reina. Seeing Reina looking fine, Arata realized that Elga had secretly instructed the beastmen to suppress their magic power. Suddenly, a loud scream was heard from afar. Everyone was talking about how delicious the Emperor Boar sandwich that Reina had brought with her was. Suzaku became curious since Emperor Boars had become rare lately. She took a bite of the sandwich and exclaimed about how delicious it was. She was impressed with its taste, and complimented Reina's cooking. The festivities continued and loud noises were heard from the other side. Beastmen were flying around, and the humans couldn't get used to it. Suzaku let them be, saying they were young. Arata could see them having fun, but the commotion was getting closer to them. Suzaku claimed it was Gaius, a behemoth-type beast that loved going wild. Someone stepped forward looking for someone. A huge ogre-like beastman appeared and asked Reina if she was the one who made the sandwich. Reina confirmed that she made it. In that moment, Gaius pointed at her and asked her to be his wife, surprising Reina. Arata swiftly moved ahead and protected Reina, making our heroine feel moved. Even though Gaius got angry, Arata asked why he had gone after Reina. Gaius claimed that what Reina had made was delicious, and he wanted her to cook for him for the rest of her life. The sudden surge of magical power made Reina feel ill, and she nearly stumbled. Arata suddenly became upset when he saw that Gaius was the only one not being considerate with his magic power. Seeing Gaius act all-powerful made Arata angry. Gaius told Arata that he would send him flying, but Arata didn't mind at all. The two glared at each other until a burst of flames appeared between them. Suzaku understood that it was quite common to compete for a woman's affection, but she didn't want others to be rude to their dear guests. Gaius told Suzaku not to interfere, but Suzaku glared at him and said that Gaius was the one ruining the fun. Gaius was left stunned. Suzaku suddenly had an idea and suggested a Beastman sumo match instead. The humans were confused, but Elga could see trouble ahead. Arata asked for an explanation and Elga reminded him that Beastmen prohibited fights. However, to resolve conflicts, they held Beastmen sumo matches, and the two parties would place bets. Arata then realized that he would compete with Gaius for Reina's sake. Suzaku wondered if there were any objections and Elga got angry at her. Arata then looked at Reina and asked her to trust him. Reina sweetly smiled and said that she trusted Arata. Later, Arata and Gaius faced each other inside a sumo ring. One wanted Reina, while the other wanted to protect her. Suzaku said that Reina would be Gaius's wife if he won, but there was nothing in it for Arata. She then offered to give Arata whatever he wanted if our protagonist won. Arata was surprised and asked if it was really true. He knew that Suzaku had lived on the island for ages and should know a way to get off it. He then looked at Reina. She had helped him a lot recently, and this was his chance to ensure Reina's safe return home. Arata and Gaius then made their vows, and Suzaku started the match. The two men charged at each other. The two clashed with immense power, worrying everyone. Arata had anticipated that the behemoth beastman would be strong, but he assured them he was fine as he took a step forward. Gaius was surprised that a human had halted his attack and managed to advance. This created a commotion, and Suzaku was impressed by Arata's strength. Arata gritted his teeth and continued to push Gaius. The onlooker beastman began cheering for him. He understood it was supposed to be a fair match, but he couldn't allow anyone to forcibly take Reina away. He pledged to defeat the behemoth and summoned his remaining strength. Arata pushed Gaius with all his might like a bulldozer. Gaius was forced out of the sumo ring, and a hushed silence fell over the crowd. Seeing Gaius outside the ring, Arata declared his victory. Suzaku then announced Arata as the winner and the crowd erupted in cheers. Gaius knelt in disbelief at his loss. Arata paid no attention to him and approached Reina to share his victory. Although Reina claimed not to be worried, her expression told a different story. Luna jumped on Arata and Elga inquired about Arata's strength. He acknowledged Gaius's power, but he had managed to guide Gaius down a particular path. Elga believed that only someone exceptionally strong could stand against Gaius. Gaius then approached Arata, who wondered if he wanted a rematch. To Arata's surprise, Gaius extended his hand and asked to befriend. Arata was taken aback, but Gaius simply wanted to befriend all strong individuals. Arata agreed, and Gaius was overjoyed, shaking Arata's hand. Gaius offered to assist Arata in any way he needed, and Arata expressed his gratitude. Gaius then proposed another sumo match which got everyone excited, including many curious beastmen who wanted to challenge Arata. Arata had no choice and asked them to form a line. Morning arrived and Arata was the sole participant left on the sumo ring with defeated opponents lying around. He hadn't expected any of this when he just wanted to greet them. In the end, he had enjoyed it and sat on the ground gazing at the rising sun. The following day, Arata slept deeply on a hammock. Reina noticed him resting peacefully and smiled. He knew that playing with the beastmen had worn him out completely. She gently patted Arata's head and told him he looked impressive in the fight. As the sky darkened, Reina woke him up. Arata realized he'd slept the whole day, and Reina wondered if he still felt tired. Arata assured her he was fine and recognized it had been a long time since he'd slept so soundly. In his past life, even after a full day's work, he'd lie in bed still stressing about work. He couldn't help but grin, and Reina noticed. He was happy to be on the island, and Reina shared in his happiness. Arata had initially planned to live alone, but he found joy in meeting new people in this new world. He resolved to continue leading a joyful life. He understood that being alone wouldn't bring him the peaceful life he desired. Every day could be fun with the people around him. He also wanted to support Reina in any way he could, promising to work hard to ensure her safety on the island. Reina was puzzled by Arata's words, which in turn confused him. He remembered Reina mentioning her shipwreck and assumed she wanted to go home. However, Reina clarified that she hadn't really thought about returning to the mainland. This left Arata even more baffled. He recalled her mentioning it before, but now she seemed focused on helping him settle on the island. He realized he'd assumed something about Reina without her ever expressing it. Feeling embarrassed, Arata thought of burying himself in the ground, but Reina quickly stopped him. Later, inside the tent, Arata admitted his misunderstanding and requested a conversation. Reina then asked why he assumed she wanted to go home. Arata knew that Reina hadn't chosen to come to the island. It was after her ship sank. Reina paused, deep in thought, and decided to share something she didn't really want to talk about. Arata wondered if something had happened before Reina arrived on the island. Suddenly, Reina's expression turned sorrowful, and she revealed she was an orphan. The first 7-star magician, her master, had adopted her because she showed potential in magic. But her life was tough. She had to face hordes of incredibly strong monsters alone. She had to get stronger and develop her magic just to survive. Just thinking about those times made her feel sick. That's how she became one of the most powerful magicians. Reina became sad all of a sudden, and Arata asked her what was bothering her. She reminded him about her mission to find a herb that could grant immortality. But she had another reason too. She had been caught, and Arata was curious about what she meant by that. After becoming one of the great magicians, one of the princes tried to make her their exclusive magician, even though the great magicians were part of the empire, and there was no reason for her to be the prince's magician. The prince was interested in Reina as a woman, which made Arata uncomfortable. Despite rejecting the prince's advances, Reina was persistently harassed, to the point where even her orphanage was taken away. Then a royal decree was issued that she couldn't refuse. She was ordered to find the immortal medicine and decided to run away. She assumed that they wouldn't send anyone after her since she hadn't returned. Reina expressed her weariness of civilization and had a sad expression. She had been forced to become a magician from a young age, endured much pain but received no reward. On the island, her true strength and daily efforts went unnoticed. Arata asked if she was okay with giving up her magician title and living on the island. Reina sadly smiled and confessed that she never wanted to be a magician in the first place. She just wanted to be a kind person to everyone, and only learned magic because she was forced to. Arata realized that Reina wanted to stay on the island and confirmed that she didn't want to go home. She felt comfortable on the island and had already made friends with the residents. Rather than returning home, she wanted to start a new life on the island. Arata understood her and asked her to continue working together as usual. Reina took his hand, signaling that they were growing closer, marking the beginning of a significant bond between them. A few days later, Arata suggested going for a walk and asked if Reina wanted to join. She politely declined as she wanted to read a magic book. Wilhelmina had given it to her as an apology for bullying her, and Reina was impressed by the book's contents. It contained powerful lost magic on every page, and Reina was eager to learn from it. Arata reminded her of her plan to live as a kind person, but Reina saw this as a separate matter. Arata decided to leave her be since the magic in the book could help her protect herself. While Arata was stretching outside, he felt the ground rumbling and wondered if a massive monster was passing by. Suddenly, Elga appeared and asked about Luna. Arata mentioned that Luna had come over for dinner recently and wondered if something had happened. Elga informed Arata that Luna hadn't returned since the other day, and they were unsure of her whereabouts. The two men fell silent for a moment. Then Reina went outside to see what was happening. After she left, Arata shared some news with her about Luna. Reina then suggested that they search for Luna together, but Elga advised them to stay put. He asked them to tell Luna to go home if she happened to come by. Elga left, leaving Reina concerned about Luna. Arata decided to go look for Luna and asked Reina to keep an eye on their camp. He rushed into the woods, but he couldn't sense the presence of the fox girl at all. Knowing Luna, he figured she must have run into some trouble because she wasn't the type to run away from home. Arata remembered that Luna seemed perfectly normal during dinner with them earlier. However, he also noticed that Luna appeared to be having more fun than usual. She had talked about Elga and Olivia's wedding anniversary celebration and the upcoming party, mentioning that she would leave early to get a gift for the couple. Arata wondered if that present might have led to Luna's trouble. Then, Arata detected Luna's scent. He could tell that Luna was safe, but he couldn't understand why she hadn't gone home yet. As he searched deeper into the woods, Arata came across an exceptionally large tree, and there was Luna. As he pondered what Luna was doing, Arata noticed two creatures behind her, a pair of wolf cubs. Arata had been curious about the situation. Luna then reminded him that it had been Alaga and Olivia's wedding anniversary. Luna mentioned that Olivia wanted a child. Arata assumed Luna had captured the wolves and wondered about the mother. Luna grew quiet, and Arata suspected she might have done something, but Luna quickly clarified that she hadn't. When she found the cubs, their mother was already gone. Arata reassured Luna that he wouldn't accuse her hastily and asked for a better explanation. Luna agreed and went on to explain. While searching for a gift for the married couple, she stumbled upon the wolf cubs. She had found their mother being attacked by another dangerous creature. Luna tried to save the mother wolf, but it was too late, and the mother died from her injuries. She was concerned that the cubs might also be in danger, so she decided to take them with her. However, the cubs refused to leave even after Luna told them their mother had passed away. Luna buried the deceased wolf, but the cubs still wouldn't go. To protect them from potential harm, Luna decided to stay with them. Arata smiled like a protective big brother and commended Luna for her efforts. Arata then wondered about Luna's plans, and she intended to explain to the cubs once they woke up. Arata questioned if she could really communicate with them, but Luna wasn't sure. Arata asked about the type of beasts the cubs were, and Luna mentioned they were bloody wolves, which would become stronger as they grew. This worried Arata as he thought about Reina's safety. He pondered whether he should deal with the cubs right away. Just then, Luna noticed that the two cubs had finally woken up, and they noticed something. The two cubs sprinted to a specific spot, Arata wondered what was amiss and Luna explained that it was where she had buried the cub's mother. Arata suddenly felt sorrowful as he watched the innocent cubs sniffing for their mother. He realized that the little ones understood they would never see their mother again. He understood that grieving for a mother's death is something everyone does. Arata then inquired if Luna could raise the cubs properly. With a saddened look, Luna assured him that she could. Arata proposed allowing the cubs to take their time mourning for their mother, and when the moment was right they would take them home. Luna realized this was a good idea and agreed to Arata's suggestion. In the afternoon, Elga found Arata and was impressed that he had found Luna first. Arata apologized for not contacting him, but Elga didn't mind much. He could see that Arata couldn't move from his spot. Elga smiled, sat down, and asked for an explanation. Elga apologized for the inconvenience Luna had caused, but Arata didn't mind, especially since it was Luna. The two older brothers smiled at the sight of Luna sleeping. Arata allowed Luna to rest since she had been up all night. Elga wasn't concerned that Luna would get scolded, but he was sure he would hear it from Olivia. Arata could only chuckle and said Elga was truly a good person. Elga found it a bit strange to receive such praise from a man. However, the last time he received a compliment from a woman, he got scolded by his wife. Arata grinned and Elga got a bit annoyed. Just then, Luna woke up and Elga was relieved. With half-closed eyes, Luna noticed Elga and asked to be carried. Elga was silent at first, but he didn't have much of a choice. So he picked up Luna, while Arata held the wolf cubs. They made their way back home before the sun set. A week had passed since Luna introduced the wolves, naming them Kalulu and Galulu because of their howling sounds. Arata and Reina began trading with the Beastman tribe and adapted to a more civilized lifestyle. Arata wanted to build a house with Reina, but he was worried that living together might make her uncomfortable, given that they were of opposite genders. However, Reina had grown used to Arata's presence. She realized something and apologized to Arata for it. They agreed to build a house with 2 separate rooms, even though Arata insisted it was more like 2 separate houses. Reina was too focused on the idea of building their home together. The following day, Luna expressed her excitement about Arata and Reina's new house. However, Teltu wasn't pleased with the idea of them living under the same roof. She insisted on having her own room in the house, which annoyed Arata. Teltu couldn't believe that Arata was cheating on her by living with Reina in the same house. She felt it was unfair and wanted to live with her beloved. Reina overheard Teltu's concerns and suggested they add another room. She confirmed that they could build whatever they wanted and began sketching a blueprint. Luna chimed in, also wanting a room, and the 3 girls enthusiastically started planning. Arata could only smile and encourage them to work hard. A week later, the 2-story house was finished and Arata was impressed that it had been completed so quickly. Reina pointed out the magic's helpfulness in the construction, and Arata humbly mentioned he had only helped with lifting logs. Reina complimented his mud magic for making the house sturdy enough to withstand attacks from beasts like Gaia's. Arata's main goal was to protect their home, especially after their encounter with Wilhelmina and the rampaging Emperor Boar. Reina advised him not to be too humble and then instructed him to go inside and organize their belongings. The two decided where to place the dining table. They also checked the loft bed that Teltu had asked for. They examined the room below, which Luna had safeguarded with protective magic. They had 2 guest rooms in case visitors arrived. Their own rooms were right next to each other. After the tour, they giggled and noticed that it was getting dark. Reina suggested they head back to the tent and finish everything the next day. Arata realized it was their final night in the tent. He remembered how he struggled to sleep during the first few nights when he and Reina shared the same space. As he looked around the tent, he couldn't help but feel lonely. Reina broke the silence, saying that she would miss the tent life. Arata was surprised and admitted that he felt the same way. Though they would soon move into their separate rooms, their relationship as close friends and family wouldn't change. Arata then suggested that they sleep together one last time. Reina blushed a bit and agreed. The next day, as they settled into their new home, there were loud knocks on their door. When Arata opened it, a dragon girl came flying in to greet her husband. Elga and Luna had also come bearing food and drinks for a housewarming party. Suzaku appeared as well, claiming she had a present that would move Arata to tears. Arata had forgotten about the reward he was promised after defeating Gaius, as he had been too focused on Reina's safety. Suzaku noticed his lack of enthusiasm and with wings made of flames declared that she would find the best item possible. The others were excited and impressed. Suzaku told them not to be impressed just yet and conjured a fire tornado. From the tornado, she emerged in her beast form as the vermilion bird, also known as the phoenix. Arata and Reina were amazed, witnessing something they had never seen before. Arata remembered that Suzaku was someone who was stronger than anyone else on the island. Suzaku had told Arata and Reina to climb onto her back, as she wanted to give them a tour of the island. Everyone was surprised, especially Elga. Suzaku mentioned that this was a unique opportunity, and she'd only allow them to ride once as they had shown her something interesting. Arata and Reina got on Suzaku's back, and to their surprise, they didn't feel any heat, despite her fiery nature. Arata noticed the others and wondered if Suzaku would let them ride too. Suzaku laughed and called Arata funny because the other beastmen regarded her as their god. Arata asked again, and Suzaku confirmed that the others could also join. Suzaku urged the rest to hurry, but Elga and Luna were hesitant. Suzaku reminded them that they didn't have a choice since she had promised something to Arata. Luna quickly joined them on Suzaku's back, and Elga felt worried. Teltu also wanted to join. Finally, the whole group was on Suzaku's back, and she cautioned them not to fall as she spread her fiery wing. Suzaku soared into the sky, and Arata made sure Reina was okay. Suzaku told them to keep their eyes open, and Arata finally saw the island from above. It was a vast land with different landscapes on all sides. Arata and Reina were amazed by the view and confirmed to Suzaku that it was fantastic. As Arata looked around, he realized that he hadn't explored much yet. Seeing the others with him, he couldn't help but feel grateful to be reincarnated on the island. He called out to Reina, telling her that there were fun days ahead. Arata hoped that God would continue to watch over him, as he planned to live peacefully on the island. The group continued to fly over the horizon. Somewhere in the continent, the remaining 6 great magicians gathered. According to reports, they concluded that Reina had perished. Due to a fierce sea storm, they believed she must have drowned. They didn't hold high hopes for the weakest and youngest among them. They pondered on the kingdom's intentions. One of them noticed how they were being used like pawns. Another member tried to reassure the rest, worried about their tarnished reputation. A member with a smile claimed he'd go to the island Reina couldn't reach and fetch the immortal medicine himself. The others agreed, reminding each other not to further stain their names. A woman told the man she would accompany him as she didn't fully trust him. She had also grown weary of idleness. They argued for a bit, and eventually, one of them sighed in agreement. He was relieved that the two would go and supported their mission, so the man and the woman set off for the isolated island. 2 weeks after the Phoenix ride, Gaius and his friends paid a visit to Arata, but their main interest was to savor Reina's cooking. However, Gaius consumed quite a hefty portion, prompting Alaga and Luna to repeatedly escort him out. Reina assured them there was still plenty of emperor boar meat, encouraging them to settle the matter. Arata, on the other hand, was captivated by the meat buns on the table and tried to sneak one, but Reina caught him in the act. She urged him to be patient, explaining they were for the next day. Arata carefully relocated the meat buns, his eyes catching something in Reina's hands. Exotic seasonings gifted by the Beastmen tribe. She was experimenting with new flavors, and Arata was intrigued. As a Japanese man, he was thrilled to find soy sauce on the island. Reina remembered how Arata had described the flavors to her before. She then sought Arata's advice on recipes since she wasn't sure how much seasoning to use. He instructed that the soy sauce could be used as a dipping sauce for the meat, and the miso could be used for soup. However, Arata confessed he wasn't skilled in cooking. Reina assured him it was fine, as Olivia was teaching her. While they waited for Reina's miso soup, Arata realized that his tranquil life had already begun. He marveled at his newfound existence. Reina wondered if people in Japan used to have the time to create things regularly. Arata explained that some did have the time to prepare delectable food, but others did not. There were no conflicts or monsters. However, the peaceful society had made people somewhat indolent. Reina remembered the story of the phone, and Arata explained how convenient it was for busy individuals. But Reina shuddered at the thought of her master being able to reach her at any time. Before long, Reina had prepared a multitude of meat buns for the next day. She pondered what to do next. Arata then realized they had never had fish. Reina agreed, as their meals had primarily consisted of vegetables and forest meat. There was a river, but it lacked a variety of fish. Reina proposed going to the sea. The pair soon arrived at the beach and felt the sea breeze. Reina claimed that it has been 2 months already since they met on the same place. Arata laughed it off as he recalled how he saved Reina from death. Without her, Arata couldn't possibly imagine the life he was living right now. He smiled widely, and Reina wondered what was wrong. Arata then claimed that ever since he met Reina, his life greatly changed. Reina looked with worry and wondered if it was about living alone. Arata laughed and confirmed it. Reina claimed that she could read Arata like a book now since they were together every day. Arata felt touched, and Reina reminded him while they were near the sea. However, Arata noticed 2 people on the beach. Arata quickly ran over to them and noticed that they were not breathing. He asked Reina to help the other person, but Reina was too flustered. Arata then started to apply CPR on the man first, and the man started breathing again. Arata then checked on Reina, but her method was different. She used magic to apply shock on the woman. Seeing the woman react, Reina was glad that it was working. She tried one more time, but Arata stopped her. He asked what she was doing, and Reina claimed that she was saving the woman. However, the woman looked damaged on top of being drowned. Reina then corrected Arata that it was normal to make someone conscious with lightning magic. She asked Arata to understand and continued shocking the woman. Seeing that the woman was not moving, Arata prayed for her soul. Just then, the woman started breathing, and Reina was proud of her achievement. However, Reina wished that the 2 could have died instead. Arata wondered if she knew them. Reina confirmed that they were some people that she didn't wish to see again. The man was Zeros Graindar, while the woman was Marlon Melina. They were the 6th and 7th of the 7 great magicians and higher ranked than Reina. In the end, they took the magicians back to their house. Arata was happy they had guest rooms. However, Reina felt sad because unlike her, Zeros and Marlin had been part of the great magicians for over 20 years. She thought they were much stronger than her. Arata was confused since they looked young, and Reina explained that magicians could control their aging. She told Arata that both of them were over 50 years old, which amazed him. Because of the significant age gap, older magicians didn't like Reina much. The magicians were mostly focused on their magic and didn't pay much attention to others, so she tried to stay away from them. Reina blamed herself for being weak. Arata was concerned, but he reminded her that their titles didn't matter on the island, and Reina was no longer part of the great magician. Reina was touched by his words. Suddenly they heard some noises from the guest room, and Arata went to check on them. He asked how the two magicians were feeling, but they were stunned when they saw Reina standing by the door. They had assumed she was dead, so her presence surprised them. Reina still greeted them, and soon the four of them sat down for introductions. Arata mentioned that he had heard about the two from Reina, but Marlin interrupted him, expressing their gratitude for being saved. Zeros was also surprised to see Marlin show appreciation. Arata and Reina were taken aback. Zeros then had no choice but to thank them too. Arata finally realized just how bad the two magicians were, as Reina had mentioned. The two then introduced themselves, sharing their magician titles and showcasing their special magic abilities. Arata introduced himself and explained his situation, and it was clear that Reina didn't need to introduce herself. Zero still couldn't believe that Reina was alive. Marlin asked Arata about the island. Arata seemed puzzled as it was quite challenging to explain it. Suddenly, Arata sensed something outside. He then asked Reina to clarify things for the two of them and left them confused when he excused himself. Looking outside, Arata noticed a flying dragon that was calling him husband. Teltu, the dragon, crash-landed on Arata. He was relieved to see Teltu so lively. Teltu began sniffing Arata and his clothes, claiming she could smell a girl, either Reina or Luna, and asked if Arata had another woman with him. Arata decided to explain and skip the details. Fortunately, Teltu accepted the explanation and said that the island, created by God, was meant to be protected and monitored. Entering the island was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. Teltu found it hard to believe that someone like Arata had come to the island, and bringing more humans inside was even more absurd. Teltu suspected that something was interfering with the island's protective barrier, even though it was created by God. Arata speculated that the god who had reincarnated him might be different from the one Elga had mentioned. If there was interference with the barrier, only the god who created it could fix it. Arata asked Teltu about the consequences if the barrier were to come down. Teltu believed there wouldn't be many problems as they didn't really care about the outside world and might cause some chaos only during dull times. Arata grew concerned upon hearing this and tried to put the matter aside, inviting Teltu inside for a meal. Teltu was excited about eating meat and Arata promised her anything she desired. Just then, Zeros and Marlin came out of the house having finished their discussion with Reina. Teltu wondered if they were new visitors. The two magicians became alarmed and assumed a defensive stance. However, they froze in place, trembling in fear. Zeros thought Teltu resembled the red hell dragon that had devastated their nation long ago, and Marlin couldn't help but curse. Arata noticed the situation and urged the two to calm down, insisting that Teltu was innocent. Nonetheless, Teltu suddenly unfurled her dragon wings, creating an intimidating presence. Arata was puzzled by her behavior. The dragon girl then landed and expressed her joy at letting out her dragon side once in a while. The magicians were terrified. Arata observed Teltu silently and eventually told her that he disliked the way she had acted. Teltu quickly folded her wings and declared Zeros and Marlin her friends, welcoming them to the island with happiness. She then looked at Arata and proclaimed that they were friends now. Arata reminded Teltu that they used to be Reina's friends. He then called Teltu and gave her some affectionate pats. The magicians couldn't believe what they were witnessing, and Reina stepped out to refresh their memory about her story. She said she had already shared everything with the two, but they doubted her. Zeros declared that he could never trust someone like Reina. Arata then pondered about what the two should do next. Originally, they had planned to hang around, but after observing the situation, they decided against it. With a concerned expression, Arata inquired about Reina's opinion. Reina, upon noticing Arata's helpful nature once more, let out a sigh. Reina then offered the two a tent and a week's supply of food, but suggested that they try living independently afterward. This proposition left the two in awe, and they expressed their gratitude to Reina. She agreed, fearing the guilt of leaving them without any help. Arata realized that Reina was far kinder than he initially thought. Soon after, Arata noticed that the two were keeping their distance from Reina. She claimed it was because they didn't want to live near someone they considered beneath them. Arata wondered why they wouldn't cooperate when they were all stranded on an island. Reina gave him a stern look and asserted that only Arata could worry about such things. However, he was delighted to have made new friends. Reina sighed, realizing that only Arata could treat the great magician so casually. She recalled Arata's belief that titles didn't matter on the island, and she agreed, trying to let go of her source of stress. She declared herself a regular resident of the island, which brought a smile to Arata's face. Teltu then suggested they go hunting together, and Reina reminded them to gather some delicious ingredients. She promised to prepare a scrumptious meal. Arata and Teltu departed, leaving Reina behind as usual as she went to prepare dinner. That very evening after they had dinner, Arata told Reina that he and Teltu had been unable to find Zeros and Marlin in the forest while they were out hunting. Reina informed Arata that she had lent them her tents, and the two of them had gone to the riverside. This confused Arata because he remembered Reina disagreeing with the idea of setting up camp near the river, as it was prone to flooding. He began to worry about the safety of Zeros and Marlin. Reina reassured him, saying that Marlin was there and that he was incredibly skilled in water magic. She explained that the two of them were well aware of the island's dangers and believed that the riverside was their best defense. Reina mentioned knowing another person who could survive near the riverside and gave Arata a meaningful look, leaving him puzzled. Reina then recalled that a long time ago she had known that Arata defied common human sense. She removed her apron and went to take a bath. Arata thought of Reina as the most powerful magician he knew, but she humbly claimed that Marlin and Zeros were even more powerful than her. With the arrival of the two new magicians on the island, Arata anticipated what would happen next and hoped to get along with Zeros and Marlin. Suddenly they heard a sinister laugh and a familiar figure appeared in the sky. Arata felt disappointed when he saw Wilhelmina visiting again and wondered if she had come to hang out. Wilhelmina couldn't believe that Arata was speaking with her so casually. Much like Luna, she changed the subject and brought up the wall that Arata had built. Arata explained that the wall was constructed to prevent Wilhelmina from destroying their bathroom walls again, which had almost turned the situation into an R-rated scenario. Wilhelmina mentioned that she could easily fly over the wall, but Arata's goal was to prevent her from wrecking his house like she had last time. She smirked and conjured a massive ice spear, launching it at the wall on the other side, resulting in a huge explosion and clouds of dust settling down. Surprisingly, the wall remained untouched, not a single scratch to be seen. Wilhelmina felt disappointed while Arata was overjoyed. Wilhelmina started to wonder how much magical power Arata had used. Then, Arata remembered that Wilhelmina had a keen interest in Reina, not him. Interestingly, during Wilhelmina's visit, Reina happened to be taking a bath again. Arata found this suspicious and asked the High Vampire if she had come on purpose, possibly to monitor them. Wilhelmina was surprised and came down to the ground. She confidently exclaimed that she could see through everything. Arata realized that Wilhelmina was targeting Reina during her vulnerable moments. She explained that she had originally planned to destroy their house but changed her mind after sensing people who didn't belong to the island. She believed Arata had something to do with them, likely Zeros and Marlin, and Arata agreed. Wilhelmina mentioned that a hole had formed in the barrier when Arata first arrived on the island. She felt something from that hole again, and assumed that foreigners had come to the island once more. Arata was surprised, and wondered if Wilhelmina was actually trying to do something good. Wilhelmina, with a mischievous smile, planned to manipulate the newcomers. Arata had doubts about her actions once again, but Wilhelmina pondered how to mess with him. Arata asked her not to give him too many headaches. However, Wilhelmina made it clear that it was not her problem. Arata looked at Wilhelmina and realized that the High Vampire didn't really care if she bothered others. Her opinions and perspectives might be completely different from theirs. Arata just smiled and acknowledged that it made Wilhelmina unique as a person. Wilhelmina smirked as she noticed that Arata had finally understood her personality. Arata claimed that he did get it, but Wilhelmina pointed out that although they looked different, they were quite similar. Many species on the island, such as pureblood vampires, great spirits, dragons, beasts, and divine beasts, had their own unique experiences. She corrected Arata, saying that it was wrong to assume they were similar without knowing everyone on a personal level. Arata then recalled how it was back on Earth, where people had different views, leading to wars. The difference on the island is that everyone lives on the same island but has different species. Furthermore, they were all powerful. Arata then told Wilhelmina that despite the differences she mentioned, it doesn't mean that everyone should hate each other and should be friends. Wilhelmina was stunned for a few seconds and smiled. She stood up as she agreed to Arata's words. She mentioned how they all could communicate with each other and had their own feelings and emotions. She agreed that everyone could get along, whatever they were. Arata was also impressed by Wilhelmina's speech. Just then, the High Vampire wondered when Reina would get out of the bath. Arata couldn't believe that Wilhelmina just ruined the mood. He then acted like he didn't know. Wilhelmina smirked and told Arata to stop acting ignorant since she knew that Arata could see as well. She knew that Arata could see what was happening inside the bathroom. She told Arata to focus for a second and told him that she knew Arata could see well behind the walls since he was powerful. She reminded Arata that he was a man in need, but Arata started claiming that he wouldn't do such a thing. Wilhelmina smirked and looked to the side. Reina came out and wondered why Arata was not denying the fact that he could see through the walls. Arata trembled upon hearing Reina's voice, calling his name like she was a ghost from a horror movie. Reina asked again if Arata had the ability to see through the walls. Arata looked like a man who was caught cheating and explained that he could do it but wouldn't dare to do it. Wilhelmina then wondered if that was true since Reina always had her invulnerable moments, and Arata could use her as a material at any time. Arata got mad at her and told her to shut up. Wilhelmina told him to chill since his attitude wouldn't last long. Wilhelmina turned into a bat and left Arata. Reina then got the attention of Arata once again and asked for a serious conversation. Arata didn't have a choice but to be obedient in front of Reina and kneel on the ground. It would be a long night for our poor protagonist. The following day arrived and Arata said sorry to Reina. She said it was okay because Arata had already explained, and revenge wasn't something she could have done anyway. Reina assured him not to be concerned, but Arata couldn't help worrying that she wasn't looking after herself enough. Seeing Arata's concerned face, Reina admitted she wouldn't have survived on the island without him. Even with a protective barrier, it wouldn't have worked against the powerful monsters on the island. Arata was the reason they weren't being attacked. He realized it wasn't because he was a man, it was because the monsters recognized his strength. He felt like Reina was portraying him as a monster repellent. This made Arata a little sad, but he still wanted to assist her. He reassured Reina not to worry because she was also taking care of him. Reina was quite relieved. Soon after, Arata strolled outside. He knew that the monsters wouldn't come near because of his scent. That's why he walked around the area every day to warn the monsters about his territory. He wondered how Zeros and Marlin were doing. Reina had told him that the two mages camped near the river. Since they had just arrived on the island, Arata decided to check on them. He remembered there was an open area and headed toward it. There he found Zeros and Marlin on guard with a water dragon behind them. Arata was confused to see them looking terrified. He had asked the two mages what they were doing. Luna then called out to Arata and Elga was right behind her. Confused, he paused for a while and asked Elga what was happening. Elga then told Arata how they headed to his house as usual. However, Luna smelled an unfamiliar scent and went running toward the riverside. Arata thought the mages were getting attacked and asked the Beastman about it. Elga and Luna confirmed they did not attack. Arata then told Zeros and Marlin that the two were harmless, but Zeros was still on guard since they could sense the Beastman's magic power from a mile away. Just when Arata was thinking about what to do, a huge bird monster suddenly appeared. While Arata and the Beastman looked calm, the two mages were shocked to see such an imposing monster. Merlin wondered if it was a joke, seeing a lot of strong monsters on the island. Luna claimed it was a monster called Shantag bird, and based on her expression, Arata realized that the monster must have tasted good. The enormous bird had previously locked eyes with them. It perceived Arata as some kind of monster, and also identified the beastmen that it recognized from the beast tribe. Then it spotted the vulnerable humans in front of it, and the monster charged towards them. Despite appearing frightened, the two mages still managed to introduce themselves with their noble titles. Arata was surprised that the mages introduced themselves in the same way. Realizing the imminent danger, he hurried toward the two mages. Out of nowhere, Luina leaped towards the monster, referring to it as her meal, and casually stomped on it. Arata observed Luna grappling with the monster in mid-air until it crashed to the ground. Witnessing Luna's actions, the mages comprehended that they had been rescued and collapsed to the ground due to the overwhelming nervousness. Arata felt relieved that everything had ended well and checked on Zeros and Merlin. He noticed that the two looked sick, just like when Reina had been exposed to strong magic before. Arata then told them he would check the area and advised them to rest. The two mages thanked him and went back to their tents. Elga wondered if Zeros and Merlin would be okay. Arata said that Reina had gotten used to them already and the two would be fine soon. Elga promised to suppress their magic and suggested letting the two mages live near Arata. Arata decided to talk to Reina about it later. Elga mentioned he didn't really care about the newcomers, but if Arata needed to help them, the beastmen would always be on Arata's side. Arata thanked Elga for the assurance and suggested fishing since they were already by the river. Arata relaxed on the riverbank while fishing, enjoying the breeze and the sounds of flowing water. Like an old man, he exclaimed how glad he was to be alive. Elga suddenly yawned, stating that nothing was biting, the same as Arata. Despite the boredom, Arata explained that patience is part of fishing. Luna suggested they have fun. Arata decided to do something and looked for the fish himself. He heightened his senses and discovered some fishes. He then pointed out the area and the two beasts went to fish. When Arata was by himself, his fishing line began to move. He felt a sudden rush of excitement and yanked up whatever he had hooked with a single forceful swing. Out of the water emerged someone who promptly tumbled to the ground with a loud thud. Perplexed, Arata examined the individual he had just captured. Upon closer inspection, Arata wasn't sure what to do with the elf-like person in front of him. Later, back at home, we found Arata kneeling in front of Reina. She pondered whether she could ask something. She was curious about the girl he had brought home, who was currently sleeping in one of the bedrooms. Arata insisted he was just fishing and somehow ended up with the girl. Reina looked skeptical, sighed, and reluctantly accepted his explanation. Deciding to put it aside for now, She opted to focus on making dinner. Arata then remembered they had some meat, but Luna intervened, exclaiming that she hadn't shown it to Teltu yet. They planned to eat the bird meat when Teltu arrived, and Reina decided to prepare something with the fish they caught. Luna wondered if she would eat the fish she caught. Reina confirmed it, and Luna suddenly became sad. Arata, concerned, thought Luna had grown attached to the fishes, believing she needed to understand the value of life. However, Luna was actually drooling, and Arata completely misunderstood her. Meanwhile, Elga watched over the elf-like girl until Arata arrived to check on them. Arata wondered about the girl, and Elga assured him that she had just been sleeping. Elga then gazed at the resting girl and suggested she might be of the Arlu species. Arata initially thought she was an elf, but Elga clarified that though they were similar, their way of talking and living differed. He pointed out that Arlu individuals had darker skin compared to elves. Additionally, Elga explained that while elves lived in forests, Arlus resided in the mountains. Curious, Arata asked about their gods. It turned out that elves worshipped spirits of light, wind, and water, whereas Arlus revered darkness, fire, and nature. As Elga described how the two species somehow managed to get along, Arata noticed a shift in his tone and expression. Elga had explained that they seemed at peace with the elves, but the beastmen weren't particularly friendly towards them. Arata was curious, so Elga clarified that a long time ago, Phoenix was accused of stealing the gods' powers. Consequently, the elves considered beastmen as enemies, even though this story dated back 1,000 years. Just then, the Arlu girl woke up, glancing around and asking where she was. As Arata began to answer, her stomach growled, and she claimed she was hungry. Later, at the dining table, the Arlu girl eagerly devoured the grilled fish. Luna felt a bit disheartened, as the fish disappeared one by one, prompting her to compete and eat as much as she could. Reina observed the two eating a lot, and Arata and Elga worried there wouldn't be any left for them. Reina then confirmed if the girl was named Katema. Arata explained that she was from the Arlu tribe in the northern mountains. Curious, Reina wondered how someone living in the mountains ended up in the river. Arata clarified that the hungry girl went to catch some fish but ended up getting caught herself. Reina questioned if the girl was not very smart. Katema and Luna lay down on the grass after finishing their meal. Reina scolded them for lying down right after eating, but the girls said they were tired. Arata then suggested that Katema stay for the night since it was getting dark. Luna decided to do the same, and Elga allowed her to stay. Arata then led the tired girls back to the house, and Reina chuckled at the sight, jokingly calling Arata a father. Arata playfully responded, saying that makes Reina the mother. Reina was surprised and briefly imagined a family with Arata and the girls as their kids. However, Reina fell silent when she realized Arata was just joking. Elga had complained, asking them to stop behaving like a couple and put the kids to bed. In a bit of a fluster, Arata hurried back to the house carrying the kids like kittens. Elga noticed a youthful connection developing between the two humans. As night fell, the kids were fast asleep. Arata returned outside and found Reina still cooking, even though the two girls had eaten everything earlier. Arata was puzzled, but Elga informed him that Reina had hidden the fish she caught. Reina declared they would cook the fish like adults, using batter, seasoning, and herbs. The two men were speechless at the impressive menu. Reina cautioned Elga to keep quiet as the kids were sleeping. Arata expressed a desire for wine, and Elga agreed. To their surprise, Reina produced a bottle of wine and glasses from her dimensional storage. The men were genuinely astonished to learn that Reina had been hiding something incredible all along. Reina explained she never had the chance to bring it out, and with the kids not around, the three of them enjoyed their meal with some drinks. Arata drank the wine, finding it really good. Meanwhile, Elga took a bite of the fish, attempting to shout but holding back and just screaming internally. Arata kind of agreed with Elga's response. He then glanced at Reina, who elegantly sipped the wine. Arata was surprised and flustered when Reina spoke to him. Elga just chuckled at Arata's reaction. Reina then instructed Arata to look above them. The adults savored the night sky. Arata mentioned he didn't mind the usual noisy dinners they had, but having a peaceful one once in a while was also enjoyable. The day after, Arata went outside to stretch and enjoy the morning view. As he did, he noticed Katema outdoors and greeted her. Katema mentioned that the trees smelled wonderful in the morning and, in general, the morning had a pleasant scent. After a moment of silence, she thanked Arata for saving her. Arata assured her not to worry about it, but Katema insisted on not forgetting his kindness. She felt sorry for eating the fish they caught, but Arata suggested apologizing to Luna since she caught most of it. Katema then expressed her desire to return the favor and asked if anything was troubling Arata lately. Arata recalled that Katema was from Arlu, a place in the mountains. Katema shared that fire, ground, and dark spirits lived there, making it an ideal place for her. Arata inquired about the food in the mountains, and Katema confirmed there were good options. Curious, Arata wondered if he could visit, and Katema decided to consult her elders. Due to Arata saving her, he would be treated as one of them. Katema believed the elders would agree, and Arata promised to pay a short visit soon. At that moment, Reina and Luna exited the house, curious about the ongoing conversation. After some explanation, Reina thought it was a fantastic idea. She mentioned they still had plenty of food stocked up but would soon need more vegetables. Katima proudly shared that the mountain's vegetation was blessed by the spirits and offered to contribute some. Following that, Reina and Katima engaged in a discussion. Arata could sense it would take a while. Deciding to use the time wisely, he expressed his intention to wash his face in the river. Luna decided to accompany him. As they strolled toward the river, Arata suddenly heard a loud noise. It was Zeros practicing his magic. Arata greeted him, and Zeros, noticing him, widened his eyes in surprise. Luna greeted Zeros, but he only gave her a silent glare, which confused Luna. She wondered why Zeros looked at her like that, and it made him flustered. Arata noticed that Zeros was surprised to see Luna, remembering how strong she was the other day. Zeros seemed scared to live on the island with everyone else. Arata wanted them to get along, so he reminded Luna not to do anything too wild in front of Zeros, who was still getting used to island life. Luna agreed, and Arata rewarded her with some head pats. Zeros apologized to Arata, who wasn't bothered by it since it wasn't their fault. Arata hoped that Zeros would eventually warm up to Luna. Arata remembered how both Zeros and Marlin were cautious around them, and he didn't want Elga and the others to be perceived as scary beings by the newcomers. He didn't want the two magicians to be scared of the island inhabitants forever. Arata wanted to change the situation, so he asked Zeros for a chat, and Zeros agreed. Arata then invited him to breakfast, hoping to foster a better understanding between everyone. Later, Arata and Luna returned home, and Reina greeted them. Arata was curious if Reina had finished her conversation with Katina, and Reina assured him that it was over. While Reina shared what she had discovered about the nearby plants, Zeros and Marlin entered the room. Reina stopped speaking and gave them a stern look. Closing her book, she pondered why the two were with Arata. Arata, looking concerned, then explained his thoughts to Reina. Arata finished his part of the story and told Reina that he wanted to invite the two of them for breakfast. Reina got what Arata meant, but the other magicians were concerned about how she would react. Arata remembered that Reina hadn't been on good terms with the other great mages. Despite that, he believed that their conflicts wouldn't last forever, so he asked both of them to join him. He worried that his assumptions might have been incorrect all this time. Reina noticed that Arata seemed sad, so she told him to stop and assured him that it was okay for Zeros and Marlin to join them with a smile. Although Reina said it was fine, she didn't act like she was thrilled about it. Arata suggested that since they all lived on the same island, they should try to get along. Strangely, Reina's expression became tense, but she agreed with Arata. She then approached Zeros and Marlin, telling them they would eventually get used to the island. Even though she knew they had different opinions about her, she suggested putting the past behind them and focusing on getting along. Zeros took a moment and then agreed to her suggestion. He grabbed her hand to make amends and said sorry for what happened before. Reina accepted the apologies. Zeros then told Marlin to do the same. Marlin said she didn't expect this to happen and also shook Reina's hand, hoping they would get along from then on. Arata had thanked Zeros, who suggested they drop formalities and talk comfortably. Arata simply smiled and agreed. While the two men got along, Luna tugged at Zeros' jacket and wondered if he wasn't scared of her anymore. Zeros scratched his head, knelt down, and reassured Luna that he wasn't scared anymore. He also thanked Luna for saving him the previous day. Luna was pleased and asked Zeros to be friends. However, Luna playfully called Zeros a grandpa, surprising him. He wondered why she called him that, and Luna claimed Zeros looked like an old man. Zeros couldn't help but agree, considering he was 50 years old. Reina and Marlin teased him about it. Zeros then smirked and asked Luna how she would refer to Marlin. After thinking for a while, Luna called Marlin a grandma. Zeros burst into laughter as he expected Luna to say the same about Marlin. Arata could see that the issues they had were now resolved. At that moment, Katina woke up and said she was hungry. Arata suggested they have breakfast. Reina assured the kids that they would eat. While the girls got ready for the meal, Arata spoke with Zeros and Marlin, expressing hope that they would get along. The two also shared the same wish. As they set up the table, Arata observed two magicians arguing. He pondered about how their island life would unfold with the arrival of newcomers. He guessed that the duo would try to find ways to leave the island, and he was okay with that. Arata thought staying on the island might make them stronger. After all, everyone on the island had the freedom to do as they pleased. Arata looked forward to meeting more people in the future. His main goal in living on the island was to have as much fun as possible. Soon everyone began their breakfast together. After breakfast, Arata talked about how the house had changed. Reina said she felt tired after eating with everyone, and mentioned how life is full of surprises, because she didn't expect to meet old friends again. She mentioned knowing Zeros and Marlin for a long time, but they rarely spoke. Arata remembered that initially Zeros and Marlin kept their distance due to their pride as great mages, and they didn't like Reina from the beginning. However, as their problem got solved, Arata thought the two would soon move closer to them. He explained that it would be good for them to collaborate. Reina agreed because it would benefit both parties. When Arata inquired how they could work together, Reina pointed out that Zeros had fire skills suitable for barbecues and the skill was called Extinction. Perplexed, Arata realized it was a bit much to use a skill named Extinction for a small fire. Reina then mentioned that Marlin was excellent with water, and they could create a water fountain with her skill called Eternal Water. Upon hearing the skill names, Arata assumed these skills were powerful. However, he also recognized that the island was still more powerful than them, and these skills might not be very useful. They really only needed skills for their day-to-day life. Following this, Reina suggested having the two mages live next to their house, and Arata agreed. Shortly after, Arata and Reina encountered Zeros and Merlin, who requested them to be neighbors. They agreed and set up their tents close by. They shared a meal together and afterward, Merlin took a soak in the hot springs, surprised to find one on the island. Reina explained that she and Arata had built it after their previous bathhouse was destroyed. She seemed upset about its destruction, which was evident from her explanation. Meanwhile, Arata and Zeros were outside creating a fire. Arata shared his thoughts about his fire magic, but Zeros questioned how he could focus on magic while feeling frustrated. Arata admitted he didn't fully understand Zeros yet. Feeling uncertain about what to do on the island, Zeros asked Arata for a task. Arata pondered what Zeros would have done if he hadn't invited him. Zeros expressed confusion, explaining he initially planned to focus on surviving for now, and then explore ways to escape the island later. Arata realized that the other two, unlike him and Reina, had chosen to reside on the island. He understood that they were eager to return home. Arata then admitted that nobody, not even Elga, knew how to leave the island. Zero felt a shiver down his spine as he remembered Elga's look and magical strength. Seeing Zeros trembling, Arata realized that Zeros was still scared of Elga. He then told him that Elga was a good person. Zeros then pointed out that it was natural for a normal person to be scared of someone overwhelmingly more powerful than them. He exclaimed that Arata was the weird one. Arata understood him and just realized that he had never been scared once ever since he came to the island. However, he was somehow wary of Suzaku and Ui. Zeros wondered if those were people Arata was scared of. Arata claimed he was not scared, but he could feel that the two were different from the others. He assured Zeros that the two were not bad people except Ui, who kept playing pranks. Just then, Ui came over after hearing how Arata thought of her. She felt good that a monster like Arata described her like that. Zeros was surprised and fell to the ground. Arata sighed and walked toward the bathhouse. Ui wondered why he was standing between her and the bathhouse. Arata claimed she might destroy it again. He then asked Ui again not to visit them while Reina was taking a bath. Ui told him not to ask for the impossible. She then claimed that Reina's face turning red in embarrassment was great to see. She doesn't want to force him into anything, but she requested Arata to move aside. She claimed she won't take responsibility for any damage that might happen to Arata's body. Arata still told her not to. Ui gave up and finally noticed Zeros. She introduced herself and her race as a vampire. With a trembling voice, Zeros managed to introduce himself along with his title. Ui smirked and told Arata that Zeros's reaction was supposed to be the norm when meeting her. Arata then claimed Ui was not scary looking in the first place for him. Even though she was a bit annoying, Arata still treats Ui as a great friend. Ui then looked away and called Arata nice. Arata wondered if Ui was being embarrassed. Ui cursed at him and fired off a magic attack. Zeros was worried for Arata, but our protagonist claimed it was the norm. Zeros was doubtful after seeing such a powerful attack. Ui claimed she was not the first monster that Arata met and told him to look at who was with him. Arata called her rude. Ui then returned her attention to Zeros, who was surprised. She claimed she could see him as a stranger in the meantime. Zeros was scared but still put up a defensive stance. Ui then claimed that she came over to kill some time and didn't bring over any presents. She then pulled out something and called it a delicacy of the island. To start their friendship, she would give it to Zeros. Arata used his monstrous speed and snatched the mushroom from Ui's hand. I wondered why Arata was getting in her way. With a trembling voice, Arata claimed he knew what the mushroom was. A few days ago, Arata and Elga went to forage. Arata felt amazed when he discovered the forest had plenty to eat. However, Elga cautioned him to choose carefully. Arata, curious, questioned if what he found was safe to eat. Elga was surprised when she saw the mushroom Arata was indicating. She confirmed it was edible but unusual. In response to Arata's inquiry, Elga explained that the mushroom could cause intense arousal and a hushed silence. Elga then reminded Arata about Ui, leaving him puzzled about why she brought her up. Angrily, Elga admitted that Ui had given her the mushroom during their first meeting. It dawned on him later that he had taken action with his wife after regaining his senses. Elga advised Arata to be cautious around Ui. In the present moment, Arata exclaimed that the mushroom made people act strangely. Zeros was surprised, and Ui felt disappointed that Arata was aware of it. Arata admitted that Elga had warned him, and Ui expressed frustration because she had assisted Elga in finding happiness. Arata mentioned that Elga was still upset because he had been compelled to eat something he didn't like. He was relieved that Elga's wife Rivia didn't discover it. Ui was astonished that Arata could talk about it so casually. Arata was confused and asked what she meant. Ui had given up on him and decided to talk about Reina. However, she suddenly got beheaded. Zeros was shocked, but Arata acted like it was normal. Reina then stepped out of the bath and started complaining about Ui's visit. Ui confessed that she loved seeing Reina embarrassed. Reina told her to come when she cooked instead so she could make something delicious for Ui. The vampire knew that Reina's cooking looked delicious, but she still found Reina's embarrassment more enjoyable. Ui then left, promising to visit again. Everyone watched her leave. Zeros had asked if he would encounter more folks like Ui on the island. Arata responded, saying that Ui was indeed unique, but there were others with similarities on the island. Zeros seemed a bit let down, but still acknowledged what Arata shared. Then, Zeros admitted that he wouldn't have made it on the island without Arata's presence. Arata took a moment to reflect, realizing it would have been nicer if a girl had expressed Zeros' sentiments. 1 week later, Zeros decided where to build his house since camping didn't suit him. Arata and the others helped the two newcomers build a house. Afterward, they had a wonderful time celebrating the completion of the homes. That night, Arata and Reina talked about taking things easy now that they had finished building the newcomers' houses. Also, thanks to the two mages, their life on the island had become easier. Knowing that Zeros and Marlin had named magic, Arata wondered if Reina had something similar. Reina confirmed that she had something called 10,000 magic. Arata found it amazing just from hearing the name. However, Reina said it was not that great since her magic was spread across many things and not focused on one. She claimed it was not as powerful compared to other named magic. Arata disagreed and said her magic was useful for survival on the island and could help them live better. He reminded Reina how she was the only one who could use storage magic and, because of the variety of her spells, her 10,000 magic was actually amazing. Arata said Reina was amazing herself for having that magic. Reina was surprised and suddenly got embarrassed by the praise. Arata thought she looked cute while blushing and realized he wouldn't have lived a good life without Reina. Thanks to her, Arata was able to have a good time with others. Suddenly, Arata noticed that Teltu hadn't visited them recently. Reina also saw that Ui wasn't around lately, even though she usually peeked at her bathing every night. Arata found the coincidence too suspicious and wondered if something was going on. He wasn't worried about Teltu but about Ui not visiting. Reina thought the two were planning something. Arata disagreed, saying Teltu and Ui weren't friends and didn't talk to each other. They decided not to think too much about the two missing. The next day, Ui surprisingly visited, using the front door this time. Unamused, Reina asked Arata to beat up Ui, but Arata doubted he could do such a thing. Ui glared at them and was disappointed to be unwelcome. Arata already knew Ui was planning something and asked why she visited so early. Ui then asked where the others were, and Arata confirmed they hadn't visited. Ui then claimed it was perfect that no one would get in the way of her plans. The whole place suddenly shook. Arata realized what was happening and grabbed Reina to escape. Teltu then appeared in her dragon form, charging at them with anger. Reina was shocked to see Teltu attacking. Arata explained that Teltu was being controlled. Reina then figured out that Ul was behind it. Arata landed in the nearby woods and asked Reina to run away since he would stop Teltu alone. Reina wasn't worried because it was Arata, but she still asked him to be careful. After Arata assured her, Reina ran away. Arata glared at Teltu, who was diving at him at high speed. He opened his arms and asked Teltu to calm down for a bit. At that moment, Teltu changed to her human form and hugged him while growling. Arata was glad she was okay. He knew she never wanted to cause harm and just wanted attention, but the damage was done. Teltu kept growling and touching him, which made Arata realize that she had lost her mind because she was acting differently. Reina then came back and asked if he was okay. Arata said he was fine, and told her about Teltu's condition. He suggested asking Ul for an explanation. Arata, Reina, and Teltu returned home. Ul, who was having tea, was impressed that Arata quickly handled Teltu. Arata asked what she was doing, and Ul said she decided to make something for them since she was always being a bother. She cooked a delicious meal and assured them there was nothing bad in it. However, everyone looked at her suspiciously. Ul felt disappointed that they didn't want to eat the meal she had put effort and time into making. Arata first asked what had happened to Teltu. Ul explained it wasn't a big deal and just made Teltu a bit more honest. Arata asked what she meant. Ul then smirked and glared at them, claiming she used her evil eyes. Arata felt chills on his body but soon realized nothing was happening. Ul was disappointed that her tricks didn't affect Arata. Arata asked if Ul was controlling people or something. Ul denied that and explained that she only amplified someone's animal instincts. Arata now realized why Teltu was acting strangely, and asked Ul what the cure was. Ul suggested eating the dish she made, but Arata and Reina doubted its effects. Ul asked them not to be boring and poured the soup into a bowl. Arata said she wouldn't eat anything suspicious. Ul threatened that she would make Reina eat it instead. Arata stayed quiet for a moment, then decided to try the food. He thanked her for the meal and after taking a spoonful was surprised. He suddenly felt warm and at home. After finishing the soup, he put down his spoon and sighed with relief. Ul saw that Arata found it delicious from his expression. Arata felt disappointed that he hadn't savored the soup more. He then told Reina and Teltu to eat, and the two girls decided to accept Ul's peace offering. Reina agreed as long as there was nothing strange in the food. Reina and Teltu each took a bite and found the soup delicious. Ul was happy and reminded them they could have seconds. Arata asked if Ul wouldn't eat, and the vampire said she was already full but had saved room for dessert. She then gave a suspicious smile as if planning something. Arata asked what she meant and Ul said it was nothing. They all continued eating until they finished everything and had a peaceful rest time afterward. Ul looked bored and disappointed and asked if the others weren't going to do anything fun at all. Arata claimed there was nothing. Ul then reminded Arata that a man and woman were living together and she expected that something was going on between them. She continued talking about nighttime activities, but Arata strongly denied it. Ul felt disappointed, clicked her tongue, then smirked, claiming that things would change soon. Arata became alert and realized that Ul really had done something as expected. Suddenly, Teltu hugged Arata while sweetly growling, and Arata asked what was wrong. With a flushed face, Teltu let out a weird laugh. Arata could see that the dragon girl was acting weirder than before. Arata then asked what Ul did to her. Ul reminded him that she only made some nice food for them. Just when Arata realized there was something in the food, something soft touched his back. Reina suddenly hugged him, weirdly giggling and sweetly calling out his name. Arata got flustered by the sudden skin contact and Reina's seductive whispers in his ears. She even started touching Arata's body, making him flustered and asking her to stop. Arata angrily asked Ul what she did this time. Ul giggled and claimed there was nothing toxic in the food while pulling out a bottle from nowhere. Arata was confused to see a bottle of wine. Ul claimed she only used regular ingredients but was disappointed that alcoholic drinks also didn't affect Arata. Arata asked if it was just regular wine and Ul confirmed. However, it was her own brand with her magic power in it. Arata then strongly protested that it was not normal wine after all. He then asked about the effects and Ul confirmed that drinking a large amount would turn someone into a vampire. However, she only used a little, and the only effect was to induce a happy sensation. Reina and Teltu started acting strange and spoiled, asking Arata for head pats. Arata sighed since he had no choice and began patting Reina's and Teltu's heads. He thought the two girls were cute. Teltu was cute from the start, but Reina, who was usually dignified, seemed completely different. He found this version of Reina cute too. Reina kept whispering his name in a sweet and teasing tone. Arata tried to control himself. He decided to leave so he wouldn't take advantage of the two drunk girls. Ul was disappointed but happy to finally see something from Arata. Today's events were also delightful for Ul. Arata ran as far as he could and realized things might have become dangerous. For now, he had no choice but to trust the girls to Ul. He then remembered the playful side of Reina and called her like a lover out loud. He splashed water on his face to snap out of his daydreams. He looked at the landscape and realized it had been a long time since he had been alone. Reina had started living with him, Teltu and Luna would always come to play, and he had been hanging out with Elga and Zeros lately. In the past, Arata thought he would always live alone on the island. Now that he was alone again, he felt strange. He realized once more that humans always learn from experience. As he decided to walk around since it would be bad to return too soon, a magic circle under his feet activated. A bright light blinded Arata, and he wondered what he had stepped into. When he opened his eyes, he saw the remnants of a bloody battlefield. This sudden change in scene surprised Arata. Suddenly, someone found him and asked where Arata had come from. The boy, holding a sword, stood with two girls who looked like characters from an RPG game, a mage and a priestess. Arata, who was just as confused, cursed loudly. A dragon appeared, roaring at Arata and preparing to breathe fire. The boy told him to run quickly from the attack. Arata looked back and saw that the dragon, having quickly assessed his strength, stopped its attack. Although the dragon seemed strong, Arata felt it was weaker than anything on the island and did not sense any power close to Ul or Teltu. At that moment, the priestess fell to her knees and apologized. She had claimed that she failed and accidentally summoned Arata instead. She explained that she intended to summon a beastman, but Arata appeared instead. The hero reminded Serena, who was kneeling, that as the saintess, she shouldn't be performing any summons. Serena insisted that summoning a beastman was the only way to defeat the dragon in front of them. Eli, the mage, told the hero Ark and Serena that there was no time to argue. She also blamed herself for being weak and called herself a terrible mage. From their conversation, Arata realized that they were a group of heroes, and the creature in front of them was supposed to be the Dragon of Death. However, the dragon looked scared and was sweating heavily. Ark called the dragon a bastard for releasing such a powerful aura. Serena vowed to defeat the final boss with all their might. Eli promised to put her title on the line to fight the dragon. Arata was left ignored between the two sides and couldn't help but sigh. He accepted that he had been summoned instead of a beastman and thought the three were somewhat surprised. Personally, he was more worried about getting back to the island safely. Ark then told Arata to find a safe place while they fought the dragon. Serena began praying for Arata's soul, which wandered on the battlefield. Using crude language, Eli hoped Arata would make it out alive. Arata realized they were good people and decided not to leave them to die. He told them to handle the complicated matters later and walked toward the dragon, surprising both the hero's party and the dragon itself. Ark exclaimed that facing the dragon was dangerous. Despite this, nothing worse happened, and Arata just stared at the confused dragon until it started sweating. Annoyed by Arata's gaze, the dragon let out a breath of flame. Ark and the others were in despair as they saw someone burning alive in front of them. Serena blamed herself for summoning him, and Ark blamed himself for not jumping in to save Arata. However, Arata remained unharmed and alive. His clothes didn't even get burned. Both the dragon and the hero's party were puzzled by this scene. Arata then cracked his knuckles and claimed it would be his turn now. The dragon looked surprised and started shaking its head, refusing to acknowledge Arata's turn. Arata wondered if the dragon understood him but decided he was just imagining things. He then gave the dragon a powerful uppercut, sending the massive creature flying into the sky. The hero's party members were left confused and shocked as they watched the enormous dragon fall back down from the sky. With a loud thud, the dragon fell unconscious. Arata said it had been easy. His single punch had also stunned the onlookers. He then asked Serena if he could return to where he had come from. Serena was puzzled until she noticed the bright light shining from under Arata's feet. She asked if Arata was a god, but he said he was just a human. Realizing he could go home, Arata said goodbye to the heroes. Serena then asked for his name, and Arata thought about it for a moment before introducing himself. Serena promised to spread Arata's name across the world using her title as saintess. She declared that the Lord had come down to save them. Arata denied being a lord, but Serena was set on spreading his name anyway. She thanked Arata respectfully as if he were a minor god, and the bright light blinded him again. Arata was then teleported back to the exact spot he had been on the island. He wondered what had just happened and decided to think of it as a dream or something. Assuming that Reina was back to normal, Arata chose to go home. Arata came home to find Reina waiting in the living room. When he saw how flustered she looked, he knew she remembered everything. Ul giggled and greeted Arata warmly. Arata noticed that Ul was enjoying herself and he agreed with the vampire. He thanked her for taking care of everyone while he was away. At that moment, Teltu ran down from the second floor and hugged Arata as a welcome. Arata felt relieved that Teltu was back to normal. He also called out to Reina and was happy to see she was back to her usual self. Reina seemed surprised but then giggled and welcomed Arata home. Seeing Reina laugh again made Arata feel glad. Suddenly he felt something odd and realized he was flustered. He came to the conclusion that he had stronger feelings for Reina than he had realized. Noticing the situation, Ul told Teltu to go home. However, the mischievous dragon wanted to stay with Arata for the night. Ul then waved her hand. Using her magic, she had caught Teltu, saying that she wasn't being fun. Teltu had asked what she meant, but Ul silenced her by covering her mouth. Ul then walked toward the door to leave and told them to enjoy their night. Arata and Reina had looked unimpressed, but Ul seemed to be enjoying herself. Now that they were alone, Arata felt awkward. Reina broke the silence and asked what they should have for dinner. She seemed to be trying to please him, which surprised Arata. However, he suggested that they rest since they had had a busy day. He proposed they go back to their usual routine the next day. In his mind, Arata apologized to Reina for not wanting her to make any advances toward him. Reina felt a bit disappointed but quickly put on a smile and agreed to Arata's suggestion. Arata looked pleased. However, Reina didn't stop there. She reminded Arata that he wanted things to be a bit different today. She shyly hugged him and said she was no longer drunk this time. She asked Arata if she could spoil him for the day, promising they would return to normal afterward. Arata was stunned. Reina's actions completely threw off his common sense. He hugged her back, touching her with love and respect. This moment made him even more attached to his little island. Meanwhile, at the royal palace, the heroes were reprimanded by the king for summoning a devil. Serena tried to explain, but the king refused to listen. He called them fake heroes because they had summoned the devil during the last battle. Serena couldn't believe they were being denied their hero status. Serena had exclaimed that Arata, the one they had summoned, was a human, not a devil. However, the king refused to believe that a human could defeat the dragon in just one attack. He then claimed that everyone in the church now knew that the saintess had sold her soul to the devil. Serena looked defeated. The king then said there was no reason to continue the conversation since the hero's party would soon die. The three were surrounded by knights. Eli couldn't help but curse. She knew Serena the saintess shone the most brightly, but that brightness was too intense and could easily be tainted by darkness. For the church, Serena was a major problem, and the speed at which the rumor spread must have been orchestrated by the church. Eli realized they had been surrounded the moment they stepped into the palace. She couldn't believe she had risked her life for the kingdom. She then activated her dark magic. Seeing how powerful it was, Serena and Ark tried to stop her, knowing it would put her life at risk. Eli was willing to take that risk if it meant protecting her friends. When Eli tried to make a sacrifice, Serena called out to God. She no longer cared about what happened to her and decided to take action. She prayed for everything to stop, hoping no one would get hurt. Ark and Eli noticed that Serena used the same words she had used when she summoned Arata. But instead of Arata, a woman's voice responded to Serena's request. Ul appeared in the palace, confusing Serena. Ul laughed, enjoying the divine power and finding the situation amusing. She was surprised to find herself outside the island, realizing she was near Serena because of her connection with Arata. Hearing Arata's name from Ul left Serena puzzled. The knights then asked Ul for her name. Ul told them to carve her name into their skulls. She introduced herself fully, making the knights break into a cold sweat, as her name was known as a myth from 10,000 years ago. Ul giggled and revealed her other titles: the God Killer and the Demon Queen. She then used her powerful magic to destroy the knights. Soon after, the palace was in ruins, and only Serena, Ark, and Eli were left alive. Ul claimed that she had done what Serena asked and that none of her friends had been hurt. Serena thanked Ul and asked why she had come. Ul said she was bored and curious about Arata's powers and God's calling. When Serena heard Arata's name, she thought Arata had asked Ul to come. Ul, enjoying the chance to mess with the hero's party, lied and confirmed that was the case. She mentioned that the summoning magic was being cut off and said her goodbyes. Serena said they hadn't thanked her enough, but Ul said it was fine since she had enjoyed herself. As her final piece of advice, Ul told them to think strongly of Arata if they wanted to see him again. She was sure they would end up on the island where she and Arata lived. She then told them that the island was where God resided, Arcadia. The three watched as Ul disappeared and remembered the name of the island. Ark then told Serena to keep moving, and Eli reminded them that they were now criminals. Serena decided to continue, and their next destination was Arcadia. This group of three was ready to continue their adventure. At the same time, at Arata's home, he had found his life to be peaceful. The house was fully built, and his relationship with the Beast Tribe had improved. Still, he wanted to achieve more. Arata proposed creating a path between their home and the Beast Tribe's land. Reina was curious about why Arata suddenly wanted this. He reminded her how rough and dangerous the trip was when visiting the Beast Tribe. Reina agreed, noting that the island was never meant for human civilization. Zeros also mentioned that the difficult journey was why the two newcomers hadn't met the Beastmen yet. By improving the travel conditions, Arata believed they could strengthen their relationship with the Beast Tribe. Reina thought it was a good idea, but she was concerned that building a path might invade the Beastmen's privacy since they were already living on the Beast Tribe's land. Arata hadn't considered that. Soon after, they discussed the path with Elga. Elga didn't mind and told Arata to do what he wanted. He also mentioned that most beastmen were afraid of the monsters in the nearby forest. If Arata had built a path leading to their homes, the forest monsters wouldn't have gone near them. It would have meant that Arata's plans would have been helpful to the beastmen. Reina suggested they consult with Suzasu first, but Elga said she wouldn't care, and was currently away from their village. He mentioned that Suzasu had gone to Ul's place and hadn't returned yet. He noticed that Suzasu had been in a hurry, which was unusual for her. Arata worried about her safety. Elga reassured him that Suzasu could come back to life after dying, so it was pointless to worry. Elga then shifted the topic back to building the path and offered his help. He also planned to ask Luna and the others to assist with Arata's project. Arata was grateful. Reina then asked how Arata planned to build the road. Arata suggested cutting down the trees and using magic to build the road. Reina had a headache and reminded him that magical power wasn't unlimited. She also pointed out that the Beastman's village was quite far from their home. However, she suddenly realized that she had never seen Arata experience magic burnout. Arata agreed, which shocked Reina. Although one problem seemed to be resolved, another one came up. Reina asked what to do with the cut-down trees. She reminded him that trees were living things and couldn't be discarded without disrespecting the environment. Elga then asked for the logs, as the Beastman tribe could use them. With things settled, the three decided to proceed with the project. Arata started by cutting down trees to make a path. Reina, Luna, and Teltu helped trim the trees into logs for use. Elga then took the logs to their village. This process continued for 3 days. By then, a path was created and Arata said they did a great job. Reina reminded him that there was still a long way to go. Arata agreed that there was still distance to cover but felt it wouldn't take them long. He then looked for Marlon and Zeros, and Reina explained that the two were burned out. She also mentioned that she was reaching her limit. Arata decided to end the day for now. Seeing how dirty she was, Reina wanted to take a bath. Arata told her to rest while he prepared the bath. Reina was surprised and thanked him. Though they could still do more work, Arata chose to take some time to relax. He knew he could finish the project faster if he worked alone, but he enjoyed working with Reina and the island's people the most. Being able to do whatever he wanted on the island was amazing for him. As a reincarnated person, Arata decided to make the most out of everything. The road-making project continued, and Arata and Reina received more help from the other island inhabitants. However, they had not yet completed half of the path. Arata enjoyed working with others rather than alone. They were not under any time pressure, so Arata decided to relax and go fishing in the river. While fishing, Arata saw Katima floating down the river. He helped her out of the water and she thanked him. Arata asked why she was in the river but got distracted by her disheveled appearance. He offered her his coat, which she reluctantly put on. Arata then asked what had happened. Katima explained that she wanted to see him. Arata was puzzled about how falling into the river related to him. Katima explained that there was a long distance between their homes, so she had decided to use the river to get to him quickly. Unfortunately, she had fallen and ended up being carried downstream. Arata advised her not to go near rivers in the future. He then asked her the reason for visiting. Katima reminded him that her tribe remembered acts of kindness. She wanted to introduce Arata to her village. Arata went home and shared the details with Reina. Reina thought it sounded good and was curious about Katima's life. However, she reminded him about their road-making project. Arata agreed that they would pause their progress, noting that it would disappoint the others if the people who suggested the project were missing. Katima reassured them not to worry, as her tribe did not expect them to come immediately. They knew Arata was busy and decided she would only contact them when he was available. She promised that the Arlu tribe was very patient, and even if Arata visited after 50 years, it would still be fine. Arata then asked what Katima would do while waiting. Since she could do anything if she went home, she asked to stay at Arata's house. Arata sighed and looked at Reina for confirmation. Katima offered to help with anything she could. Arata agreed and reminded her not to go near rivers. A week later, Katima took charge of the road-making project, easily cutting down trees. This surprised Arata and Reina. Katima reminded them of her impressive skills. The two humans had to agree. Katima proudly claimed she could even take down an emperor boar on her own. Thanks to Katima, they made huge progress with the road-making project. Arata asked Reina to keep the path clean while he cleaned up the fallen trees. Katima then asked what she should do next, and Arata told her to keep doing what she was doing. Katima continued to chop down the trees. Arata asked Reina to let him know if she ever felt tired. Reina was confident she wouldn't get tired soon because she held the title of one of the 7 great magicians. Katima then told them to hurry or she would leave them behind. Arata asked Reina to keep up with Katima for now, and the road-making project continued. A few hours later, the group found themselves hungry from all the work they had done. Normally, Reina would be careful with her mana, but she ended up getting burnt out after pushing herself to keep up with Katima. Arata and Katima were left alone and both were starving. Arata knew there was meat in the house, but Reina was not there to cook it. The two of them looked serious as if their lives depended on it. With Reina gone, they had 2 choices: either boil or cook the food. Katima asked what the difference was between the 2 methods. Arata was too bothered to explain and asked Katima to decide. After thinking for a bit, Katima decided they should cook the food, and Arata quickly agreed. Arata then checked his dimensional storage for the meat and remembered something. He asked Katima if dragon meat was delicious. Katima exclaimed that it was magnificent. Since dragons were strong, it was rare to get a chance to eat dragon meat. Katima asked why Arata had mentioned it and quickly figured out the answer herself. Excitedly, she asked if Arata had dragon meat with him. Arata said he didn't and told the story of his recent encounter with a dragon. While fighting it, he had wondered how it would taste when cooked and regretted not bringing the defeated dragon home. Katima agreed and suggested capturing a powerful nearby dragon to make a perfect meal. She then pointed somewhere. Arata was confused and looked at the residence's gate. Teltu was there, trembling in fear. She cried, realizing that Arata was planning to eat her. She now understood why he had kept her around. Teltu ran away, calling Arata an idiot husband. Katima had just witnessed a lover's quarrel, and Arata insisted it wasn't that. He decided to chase after Teltu. Teltu ran as fast as she could, but Arata caught up with her. Arata said there had been a misunderstanding, but Teltu had heard everything. She couldn't believe she had been singled out to be eaten, but Arata insisted he wasn't responsible. As Arata reached out to grab her, Teltu quickly transformed into her dragon form. She laughed, knowing Arata wouldn't be able to follow her into the sky. She told him to give up. Arata was helpless and could only watch as Teltu flew away without resolving the misunderstanding. Arata thought Teltu would cry by herself if left alone. He remembered how everyone welcomed him when he first came to the island, and Teltu was one of those people. He decided not to let her run away. Gathering his strength, he jumped toward Teltu as if he were flying. This shocked Teltu, and she asked how Arata could fly. It turned out that Arata could actually fly after imagining it when he saw Teltu leaving. Teltu said that shouldn't be possible, reminding Arata that people already thought he was strange. While in the air, Arata started to wobble and realized it was hard to control his flying. Seeing him struggle, Teltu slowed down, allowing him to catch up a little. Arata asked if she was worried about him and apologized. Teltu still acted upset because he had mentioned wanting to eat dragon meat, but her slight pout made Arata realize she wasn't really that angry. Despite his current speed, he couldn't fully catch up to her, so he thought about using Reina's wind magic and pushed himself forward while facing away from her. Teltu was surprised when Arata sped up and passed her. She asked where he was going. Arata realized he hadn't thought about how to stop and tried to use the same spell in the opposite direction to slow down. But just as he turned around, a dragon appeared. Teltu shouted that dragon meat was delicious, and that they couldn't let the one in front of them escape. Arata was shocked but decided to go after the dragon. Instead of using his fists, he used wind magic to slice the dragon's neck easily, like cutting through butter. Seeing the huge dragon fall to the ground, Arata felt proud. Teltu then grabbed him and scolded him for going too far ahead of her. Arata apologized, explaining that he wasn't used to flying yet. Teltu realized Arata needed her. She asked if he planned to take the dead dragon home and eat it. Arata nervously agreed and then asked if Teltu could eat dragons. Teltu agreed as if it was the obvious answer since dragon meat was delicious. This made Teltu realize that Arata was grouping her and the dragon he killed in the same category. Arata had just assumed that normal dragons and ancient dragons were somehow related. Teltu said that was like assuming Luna, a wolf beastman, shouldn't eat wolves. She explained that ancient dragons and normal dragons were completely different. Arata then understood that it wasn't cannibalism at all, especially after seeing Teltu drooling while looking at the dragon. Arata was glad that he and Teltu had made up. The two then decided to head back home carrying the huge beheaded dragon in midair. A week after Katima started living with Arata, the path connecting the beast tribe to Arata's place was completed. Reina was impressed that it was finished in just a month and called Arata amazing. Arata said it was thanks to Reina and the rest of the beast tribe members. Katima reminded them not to forget her, as her contribution was the most important. Arata agreed, saying it was because of Katima that the construction sped up. With this new path, they were able to strengthen their ties with the beast tribe. Since they worked hard on the path, Arata hoped that other species wouldn't damage it. Katima told him not to worry as Arata's scent was all over the path. Others wouldn't come near it out of fear. Arata remembered Alaga mentioning the same thing about his scent scaring off other beasts. To be fair, Arata's strength was already well known on the island. Arata then felt confident that Reina would be safe using the path on her own. At that moment, they both remembered there was still one more thing to do. That night, many people gathered in front of Arata's home. He announced the completion of the path and started a party. Everyone excitedly raised their drinks and gathered around a bonfire. While Arata was alone for a moment, someone familiar wrapped her arms around his shoulders. Suzaku thanked Arata for inviting her to the party. Arata was surprised to see Suzaku back after she had gone off somewhere on her own. Suzaku explained that the island's barrier had been weakening lately, so she checked on it with a mischievous vampire she knew. However, she was a bit worried when that vampire's presence suddenly disappeared from the island for a short time. Arata casually remarked that it sounded like a bad situation. Suzaku gave him a concerned look and assured him that the vampire she knew wouldn't cause any trouble and would be fine on her own. But she did hear that Ul had been messing with Arata recently. Arata felt discouraged as he remembered Ul's pranks. Suzaku then walked away, wanting to enjoy the food and have fun with the loud drunk Ilaga. Arata was happy to see everyone having a good time. He told Reina how delicious the food she always made was. Reina called him too kind for his words. Arata then looked around, watching everyone from different species enjoy good food and drinks after their hard work. He asked Reina if she thought the scene in front of them was beautiful. Reina couldn't help but agree. Arata truly felt they had grown closer to the beast tribe after finishing the path. This made him decide to get closer to the other species on the island. He remembered there were still many species like dragons, vampires, and spirits that he hadn't met yet. Reina agreed but reminded him that not all of them would be as friendly as Ilaga. Still, Arata wanted to try. At first, Ilaga treated them with suspicion, but by talking and sharing meals together, they became good friends. Arata believed they could also get along with the other species the same way. Reina supported Arata's goal. Arata remembered coming to the island without any clear goal, just wanting to live alone in peace. But now, he had a new dream. Not only did he want to get along with the beast tribe, but he also wanted to connect with everyone on the island and bring them together. With that thought, he clenched his fist and raised it to the night sky, declaring that he would unite every living being on the island. An awkward silence followed until Reina giggled, finding Arata's sudden seriousness funny. Arata insisted that he was really serious. Reina apologized and said it would be truly beautiful if Arata managed to achieve his dream. Arata was caught off guard by Reina's smile, and when she asked what was wrong, he quickly turned away. hiding his blushing face. Flustered, he said it was nothing and added that he needed to work hard to reach his dream. Reina agreed with him. Just then, Teltu appeared and Arata and Reina were happy to see her enjoying the party. Teltu exclaimed that she was having a great time. Arata asked if Teltu had already seen the beastmen doing sumo. Reina was impressed that Teltu was popular with the others, and Teltu explained that it was because she was an ancient species. Suddenly, Teltu looked sad and Arata asked what was wrong. Teltu confessed that the gathering was fun, but it was her first time joining such a gathering with good food, dancing, and people. She started crying, remembering how ancient dragons never really met because they saw each other as enemies for some reason. Arata and Reina felt bad for Teltu. Arata remembered Alaga telling him that Teltu was the strongest of her kind, so much so that other dragons bullied her, which made her a loner. Arata guessed that Teltu was thinking about her past encounters with other dragons while enjoying the party. Holding a banquet that everyone on the island could attend and enjoy seemed like a tough goal for Arata to achieve. Katima then came over and asked why they looked so down. Since the party was amazing, she suggested they enjoy it while it lasted. Arata agreed, patted Teltu's head, and Reina gave her a warm hug. Just then, Arata noticed something. Arata suddenly remembered that Katima's tribe and the Beast tribe didn't get along. Katima confirmed it. Arata gave her a confused look and asked why she was enjoying the party with the Beast tribe members. Katima returned the same confused look and asked what Arata was talking about. She exclaimed that they were at a party and she didn't care about not getting along with the others. It was a party, and she wanted to enjoy it to the fullest. Her words struck something in Arata, Reina, and Teltu. Katima asked what was wrong with having fun. She didn't really care about the conflict between her tribe and the Beast tribe. The other three were surprised by how casually she shrugged off the issue. Arata then realized something important. If Teltu was currently outcast by her own species, that didn't matter. He could simply involve them in another fun party. If they were drawn into eating, drinking, and dancing, they wouldn't feel distant from Teltu anymore. This could give Teltu a chance to fix her relationships with the other dragons. He then told Teltu to enjoy the party for now, and next time, they would invite the other ancient dragons to join in the fun. Teltu looked around and saw how lively the party was. Her tail showed a change in mood as she realized she wasn't alone anymore. Arata and Reina felt glad. Reina reminded Teltu that she was now part of their family. Just then, Arata noticed someone approaching and told Teltu that someone wanted to be friends with her. Zeros and Marlin appeared, asking Teltu to join them for a drink. Teltu looked surprised. Then Luna came running in, complaining that she had been left out by the usual group. Teltu was overwhelmed by the sudden kindness and began to cry. She wiped her tears and agreed to join the group. Seeing Teltu surrounded by friends, Arata felt happy. He then thanked Katima, who didn't even realize what she had done. Arata called her a genius, and Katima teased him for only figuring it out now. With that, Arata decided to continue the party with everyone, united by neither blood nor species, simply enjoying the moment together. The day after the party, Arata and Zeros went for a walk together. As they walked, Zeros mentioned that the girls had been talking with serious looks on their faces. Arata had not expected Teltu and Marlin to become so close. Zeros found it annoying. Whenever he tried to join them, Marlin drove him away with a glare. It made him feel bad. Arata laughed and guessed that was the reason Zeros asked him to go for a walk. Zeros confirmed it. After a while, something felt strange. The two men stopped when they sensed a strong presence nearby. Arata said he had never felt power like this before. Zeros told him to stop joking since the island was already full of monsters. Arata explained that the power he felt was wild, and if it continued, people around them could get hurt. He suggested they go check it out. The two ran forward as fast as they could. Soon they reached a place where two groups faced each other. One group was made up of ancient dragons in human form. They shouted that they would beat the demons. The other group consisted of one-horned demons who called the ancient dragons disgusting. They wanted to prove which tribe was stronger once and for all. Both sides roared and rushed into battle. The fight turned brutal. Some dragons sent demons flying with powerful tail strikes. Some demons smashed the ground with their fists and broke the land around them. Zeros watched the battle and realized it was serious. Arata agreed, but he said the fight caused too much trouble for their area. He noticed that one group had a presence similar to Teltu, so he believed they were ancient dragons. The other group had dark red skin. Arata remembered Eliga once telling him that demons and ancient dragons did not get along. He guessed these people were the demons. He also noted that it was his first time seeing demons on the island. They looked much stronger than normal monsters. Zeros grew angry and said this was not the time to calmly observe the fight. He warned that the entire area could be destroyed if the battle continued. At that moment, one of the ancient dragons changed into its true dragon form and released a powerful dragon breath attack. The blast struck one of the demons and created a massive shockwave. When the smoke cleared, the demon still stood on his feet. Only a bruise appeared on his chest. Arata felt surprised that the demon endured the attack. Zeros felt shocked. That attack had enough power to destroy a walled city in a single strike, yet it failed to bring the demon down. Arata calmly remarked that this was the kind of island they lived on. Zeros then asked what they should do. Arata said the monsters on the island had not shown any hostility toward them so far. For the moment he decided they would simply watch what happened. A familiar dragon suddenly appeared. Arata knew it was Tiltu. She hovered above the battlefield and watched the others fight. She moved around the area as if she was unsure where to go. Zeros seemed to understand what was happening. She asked Arata if Tiltu was trying to get the others to accept her. Even though the ancient dragons and the demons were still fighting, it was clear they had already noticed Tiltu nearby. Yet they chose to ignore her. Arata realized Zeros was right. Tiltu tried to join a fight, but she pulled back after only a moment. Arata cheered for her. Zeros also felt frustrated while watching her hesitate. He said that hesitation would not solve anything. Arata noticed that Tiltu looked worried. He thought this was probably a problem that only she could solve. All he and the others could do was cheer for her. He hoped she would gather the courage to act. After a short pause, Tiltu suddenly flew down at high speed and joined the battle. Zeros felt glad to see her finally take action. Arata agreed. The two men cheered as the dragon dove straight into the chaos. Arata shouted encouragement to her. Then Tiltu released a powerful dragon breath that struck both enemies and allies. Arata and Zeros were shocked. Zeros became annoyed when he saw that Tiltu attacked everyone, including her own side. Arata wanted to tell her that she could not do that. The demons and the ancient dragons quickly turned their anger toward Tiltu. One ancient dragon cursed at her. He could not believe she was doing this again. He reminded her that they were both ancient dragons and told her to stop causing trouble. A demon called Tiltu a dragon loner, and angrily said she should not act proud just because she was stronger than everyone else. Tiltu felt guilty. She tried to explain herself, but the ancient dragons and the demons joined forces. They all rushed toward Tiltu as their common enemy. Tiltu had no choice but to fight back. She released more powerful dragon breaths in every direction. Her attacks hit both the demons and the ancient dragons. Arata and Zeros watched from behind a large boulder. Zeros finally understood why Tiltu had no friends besides them. Arata could tell that she did not mean to cause trouble. He thought this was probably her awkward way of trying to be accepted, but she handled it in a very clumsy way. As she fought back, Tiltu asked why this was happening. She said she only wanted everyone to accept her. Arata watched her fight the ancient dragons and the demons with worry on his face. At this rate, Tiltu could not control her own power and might wipe out both sides. Arata was not required to save the ancient dragons or the demons. However, he had a goal on this island. He wanted to hold a feast that would bring every tribe together. With the battle happening, he could not see that goal coming true. More than anything, he did not like seeing Tiltu in that state. Zeros agreed with him. Arata then said he would join the fight and would be away for a while. Zeros laughed a little. Even in this world, he believed Arata was probably the only person who could walk into a mythical war zone and make it sound like he was just going for a walk. Arata replied that this might not be true on this island. Tiltu looked worried as she fought against the angry ancient dragons and demons. Arata stepped between them and told everyone to stop. The ancient dragons and demons looked confused and asked who he was. Tiltu quickly turned into her human form. She tried to tell Arata that he had misunderstood what he saw. She tried to explain, but Arata simply patted her head and told her it was fine. He said he already knew she was not trying to bully the weak. Tiltu looked surprised that he understood. She then nodded to confirm it. Suddenly, one of the ancient dragons shouted at them and angrily asked who Arata was calling weak. One of the demons said he did not care who Arata was or where he came from, but he could not accept such bold words from him. The ancient dragon rushed forward to attack. He believed Arata knew Tiltu, but he did not care about their situation. He threw a punch and hit Arata directly in the face. The ancient dragon laughed and mocked Arata for being too weak to dodge. Soon he realized his punch did nothing. Arata stood there without a mark on his face. He calmly said the punch felt much weaker than Gaius's charge. The demon pushed the ancient dragon aside and delivered a strong kick. The kick hit Arata and the demon believed his heavy strike would knock him down. Arata did not move. He remained standing in the same spot. The demon could not believe it. Arata then asked if the two of them were satisfied. Tiltu called out to him with concern. Arata smiled and asked why she had attacked both the demons and the ancient dragons. Tiltu hesitated before answering. After a moment, she found the courage to explain. She said that everyone had always left her out. She said she only wanted to fight together with them. Arata said he already understood. She only wanted to be accepted. Arata thought for a moment. He remembered the insults and angry words the ancient dragons and demons had thrown at Tiltu earlier. To them, Tiltu stepping in during their fights was something that happened often. Still, Arata wondered why they treated her so badly and pushed her away. He could not think of a reason. He decided he would ask about it later. Arata then called out to the ancient dragons and demons. He told them to stop fighting for the day. One of the ancient dragons became angry and asked why they should listen to an outsider who had appeared out of nowhere. A demon said they might hate to agree, but the demons felt the same. They did not know who Arata was, and he had no right to interfere in a fight between their two tribes. Arata wondered if that was really how they saw it. In a cold voice he asked them again if they truly could not accept his request. Tiltu then told the ancient dragons to go home while Arata was still being reasonable. One of the ancient dragons shouted that they would not even be fighting if it were not for someone like her. He told her to stay out of it. Tiltu said she was only worried because they were the same kind. A demon then said Tiltu was different from the rest. He added that if Arata truly planned to wipe them out they would still risk their lives to fight. At that moment Arata understood something. The ancient dragons who were Tiltu's allies and the demons their enemies did not get along. Yet they seemed to share one rule. The existence of Tiltu had crossed that rule. To Arata the rule looked narrow and unreasonable. Arata then called them lame. This angered both the ancient dragons and the demons. Arata said it was the truth. He pointed out that they avoided fighting anyone stronger than them, yet they were angry when he called them lame. Arata stomped his foot once and the land around them changed. The ancient dragons and demons stared in shock. A powerful aura began to pour out from Arata. He started swinging his fists as if preparing for battle. As he did, he wondered if they would finally allow Tiltu to fight beside them once a stronger enemy had appeared. Arata knew Tiltu should not have panicked and attacked the ancient dragons and demons. However, he also thought about why she did it. She had been desperate to find a way to be accepted. If that was the reason, then an adult should be the one to understand her effort. Arata clenched his fist and struck the ground. He asked the two groups if they would allow Tiltu to join the fight if a stronger enemy appeared. The leaders of both tribes were shocked by his question. Arata then rose into the air with a strange power and told them to try to fight him. The two tribes quickly realized how dangerous he was. The demon leader ordered his men to attack all at once. At the same time, the ancient dragons changed into their dragon forms and attacked together with their dragon breath. One demon rushed forward and punched Arata, sending him flying. The demon believed the fight had already ended. However, Arata soon came out of the dust. He delivered a powerful kick that struck every demon in his path and wiped them out. The demon leader froze in shock. Arata suddenly appeared behind him. He said this demon might be the strongest among them, but to Arata they were all the same weak enemies. He kicked the demon leader and sent him flying. After that, Arata turned his attention to the ancient dragons. Their leader became angry and ordered his men to attack. He told Arata not to think they were the same as the demons. Dragon breath attacked Arata from every direction. He did not try to dodge. When the attacks ended, he stood there without a scratch. He said the attack only felt a little warm. The ancient dragons were shocked. Arata asked if that was all they could do. Just like the demons, he decided to end the fight. He knocked the ancient dragons out of the sky one by one and sent them crashing to the ground. Soon after, both tribes knelt before Arata. Their leaders lay on the ground like worn cloth. They said they had not lost yet and tried to move. Arata expected that the two of them were stronger than the rest. He guessed they were the leaders and more skilled than the others. He could also feel that they still had the potential to become stronger. Arata then turned to Tiltu and asked for the names of the two leaders. Tiltu explained that the leader of the young ancient dragons was named Graham, while the leader of the young demons was named Gaius. Arata asked the two why their tribes were fighting. Neither of them answered. Tiltu then explained that both the ancient dragons and the demons had grown up hearing the same thing from the adults. They were always told to become stronger by fighting. Arata understood the idea. Because of that, the two groups kept fighting each other. Over time, the fighting continued until they truly began to hate each other. Tiltu confirmed that this was what had happened. Graham could not accept what she said. He called her a traitor and accused her of turning against them. Shocked, Tiltu asked what he meant. She pointed out that they had never accepted her in the first place. Graham told her to be quiet. He said she already knew who her ancestor was. Because of that, he claimed the issue had nothing to do with her. Tiltu could not argue with that. What Graham said was true. Arata then asked about the part where Graham mentioned knowing their ancestor. Tiltu reminded him that she always introduced herself as an ancient dragon whose ancestor was Bahamut. Arata remembered hearing that many times. Tiltu thought he might not have noticed before. He had often stayed with the adults. Those whose powers had not awakened yet did not know who their ancestors were. Arata finally understood something. The adult dragons Elga and Gaius always introduced themselves together with the names of their ancestors. A young dragon like Luna did not do that because she still did not know. Tiltu explained that both ancient dragons and demons valued strength. Because of that, they often fought to grow stronger. They believed that doing this honored the name of their ancestor. Graham said that was exactly why it made no sense for Tiltu to join their fights. She had already awakened her power at a young age and already knew the name of her ancestor. Graham agreed and said their fight was not something they did for fun. Arata watched the two young leaders glare at Tiltu, who still looked guilty. Then he noticed something strange about them that had been bothering him for a while. He leaned closer and asked why they were acting like they did not know the names of their ancestors yet. Graham and Gaius were shocked. A moment later, both of them looked guilty. The ancient dragons and demons behind them began to wonder what was going on. Arata felt that his guess was correct. When he had fought them earlier, those two had clearly been stronger than the others. They stood on a completely different level. He did not know the exact reason, but he asked them again if they were sure about what they were doing. Tiltu became worried and asked what was wrong. Arata then grabbed the two young leaders. He told Tiltu to wait while he talked to them for a while. Tiltu was frightened, but she said she understood. In the nearby woods, Arata spoke with the two young leaders. They told him they felt afraid after they saw their friends leave Tiltu behind after she awakened. They worried the same thing would happen to them. Even so, they still wanted to keep fighting. That was why they hid their own awakening and fought with the others while holding back their powers. The two looked guilty and stayed quiet. Arata said he understood their feelings. However, he warned them that if they kept telling lies, they would soon lose sight of who they really were. Graham said he already knew that. Grias agreed and said they could not hide the truth forever. Arata looked at their guilty faces and thought of an idea. He then told the two young leaders that they could do something about it. Several days later, Graham attacked in his evolved dragon form. He used his fire breath and introduced himself as the descendant of the holy dragon Fafnir. Guys showed the extra arms on his back and declared that his ancestor was the great Hecaton chair. He said his power came from the 100-armed giant. Tiltu prepared her attack and told Arata it was coming. The three of them launched a full attack at Arata, who stood in the middle. When the attack ended, Arata said it only stung a little. He added that he was still unharmed. With one swing of his fist, he sent the three young monsters flying. Graham fell to the ground and returned to his human form. He called Arata a monster. Grias also lay on the ground and could not believe Arata stopped them so easily. Tiltu said Arata fought in a brutal way. Arata stretched as if he had just started warming up. He asked if they were already done. Graham looked shocked and asked for a timeout. Tiltu said it was time for a strategy meeting. She gathered with the two young leaders and the other young monsters to plan their next attack. Tiltu pointed out that their plan to attack all at once had failed. Graham suggested that they split their attacks. Jais suggested using delayed attacks next. Arata watched Tiltu chat happily with the others. He smiled. He felt glad that his plan worked better than he expected. A few days earlier, Arata had suggested an idea to Graham and Gaius. He told them to fight him and say they had awakened during the battle. He said the story would not sound strange to the others. Since they would fight someone stronger than the awakened Tiltu, they would still be able to join the battles without being left out. Graham and Gaius felt surprised by the idea. Arata also suggested letting Tiltu join the fight so they could all battle together. He raised his fist in the air to cheer. The two slowly followed him. Back in the present, Arata felt happy when he saw them getting along. God had given him a strong body, so he decided to use it in a helpful way like this. At that moment, Reina and Luna walked over. Reina asked if he had finished his part. Arata told her that the young ones were still having their meeting. Reina watched them and saw that they looked like they were having fun. She suggested that everyone eat once they finish. Arata agreed that it sounded good. He then asked Luna to call the others. Soon after, Reina said the meat was ready. She told everyone to grill their own meat and warned them not to fight. She said that only those who followed the rules would get meat. She asked if they understood. The young ancient dragons and demons said they understood and called her Big Sis. Reina felt pleased to hear that and gave the signal to start eating. Luna showed the Shantak bird she had caught. Gaius praised her. Graham complained that the meat had already run out. Zero said he would ask Reina for more. Arata watched them with a smile. Then Tiltu called out to him and jumped into his arms. She said she was having a lot of fun and told him he was amazing. Arata asked what she meant. Tiltu said no one called her a loner dragon anymore and no one left her out. She said it was all thanks to him and hugged him. Arata said it was not because of him. It was because Tiltu had worked hard herself. Tiltu looked confused and said she had not done anything. Arata reminded her that when she stayed with Reina and the others, she held back her power. Tiltu said that was obvious. She said weak ones like Zeros would throw up right away if she did not hold back. Arata laughed and remembered how she used to tackle him before. He said she had learned to care about others, and that was why she could now get along with them. Tiltu lowered her head and said she did not really understand. Arata said it was fine if she did not understand yet. What mattered was that she had grown and could now take her chances. That was why everyone had accepted her. Tiltu finally realized it. She smiled, and her face turned red. Even so, she said Arata was the one who gave her those chances. That was why she loved him so much. She kissed his cheek. Then she smiled, gently pushed him away and ran off to eat more meat. She quickly turned her face away so he would not see her blush. Arata felt surprised and stayed silent for a moment. He touched his cheek as he realized Tiltu had kissed him. He felt a little embarrassed. Still, he felt glad that Tiltu was doing better now. He smiled when he saw her smile. This was the sight he had hoped for. Even if two tribes did not get along, they could still become friends if they spent time together, just like they did now. Arata wanted to grow this circle even more. One day he hoped to hold a feast where everyone on the island could gather together, no matter their tribe, age, or gender. He looked up at the sky and asked God if his dream could come true. No answer came. Arata thought that God would not hear someone like him. Then Reina asked if he could help cut the meat. Arata started to walk toward her. As he stepped forward, he suddenly heard a voice in his head. The voice said they were looking forward to him doing that. Arata froze in shock. He looked up at the sky again and thanked God for the encouragement. Then he used his magic to cut the meat, while everyone behind him kept celebrating. Meanwhile, somewhere on the continent, 4 members of the 7 heavenly great mages gathered for a round table meeting. 3 seats stayed empty. An old male mage said he could not believe that Zeros of destructive flames and Marlin of sacred water had also died. A female mage turned to another member and pointed out that their numbers had dropped a lot. The mage she spoke to stayed silent, just as he always did. Then the last mage leaned his arms on the table and said they had received a request from the kingdom. The old mage asked what the request was about. The serious female mage explained that the kingdom wanted them to defeat 3 people. The first was a saint who had made a pact with an ancient demon. The second was a fool who pretended to be a hero. The third was the Witch of Ruin. After hearing this, the old mage asked if the kingdom thought their intelligence network was weak. The female mage wondered what he meant. The old mage explained that they already knew the rumors about those 3 people were true. Even though the church had a strong influence across the continent, the kingdom could still have refused the church under normal conditions. Yet the kingdom had chosen to ask the heavenly great mages for help. To him, this meant only one thing. The kingdom had chosen greed over God. The round table became quiet for a moment. The old mage then asked what they should do. The serious female mage said they no longer needed to involve themselves with the kingdom. Still, there was value in responding to the request. The old mage asked if this matter should become their priority. He then called out to the 2 remaining members and asked if they were listening. He called their names Carla Marguerite and Seti Balder, and told them to go after the targets. Carla showed interest when she heard that one of the targets was a saint. Seti, who rarely spoke, showed interest in the skills of the hero. He only nodded in response. The old mage added that they could also examine the power of the Witch of Ruin. People said her strength matched that of the 7 heavenly great mages. He told them to decide what to do depending on the situation. Carla guessed that he wanted the saint, the hero, and the witch to join their side. After all, they had lost exactly 3 members. Those 3 might become good replacements. The old mage confirmed her guess. However, if those people turned out to be nothing more than rumors, he would let the 2 decide how to deal with them. Carla and Seti stood up from their seats and left to begin their mission. After they left, the female mage asked the old mage, Zephyr, to continue their work. She said that the times would change even more from that point on. A few days after the banquet with the demons and the ancient dragons, Graham came to visit Arata. He called him Big Bro and asked him to train together again. Gaius called Graham a bastard. He said the demons had already made plans with Arata first. Graham argued that the demons had just spent time with Arata 2 days earlier, so it should be the ancient dragon's turn. Gaius told him to shut up and stop barging in. Tiltu could not believe what she was hearing. She held onto Arata's arm and told the 2 boys to leave and go home. She said she and Arata were going on a date. Graham quickly pointed out that Arata already had Reina. Tiltu told him to be quiet. She admitted that Reina was pretty, cooked delicious food, and had a kind personality. Even so, Tiltu said she was just as good as Reina. Graham laughed. He said there was no way someone as small as Tiltu could compare to Reina's beauty. Graham also told Tiltu to look at her own poor figure before saying things like that again. Tiltu felt defeated. She complained to Arata and told him the boys were being mean to her. Graham could not believe she was asking Arata for help and said it was unfair. Graham asked if she had no pride as a warrior. The argument continued until Arata could not listen anymore. He clapped once and told them to stop. He reminded the boys not to say things that would hurt if someone said them back. The 2 boys felt guilty. They realized they were acting childish and suddenly became quiet. Arata then pushed Tiltu forward and told her to make up with them. Tiltu looked nervous and unsure. Graham also looked embarrassed. He and Gaius said they were not really close to Tiltu, so they did not know about that. Arata asked them in a cold tone if they were saying they could not get along with her. He was smiling, but his eyes were not. Gaius could not even measure Arata's power. Tiltu also felt scared even without seeing Arata's face behind her. The 3 young monsters quickly decided to shake hands in front of him. Arata was glad that the matter was settled. Just then Gaius said he had something he wanted to tell Arata. He wanted to introduce his younger sister to him soon. He also asked if Arata would mind visiting their village again. Arata did not know that Gaius had a sister. Gaius confirmed that he did. Graham complained that Gaius was getting ahead of everyone else. Gaius ignored him. He said the ancient dragons already had Tiltu, so it was only fair if someone from the demon tribe was introduced to Arata as well. Because of that, Graham also asked Arata to visit their village. He said he would gather all the young ancient dragons to welcome him. Graz angrily told him to stop copying him. Graham denied copying anything. He explained that Graz only wanted Arata to meet his sister, but he wanted Arata to meet everyone. Graz could not believe that this dragon always had an excuse for everything. Arata stepped between them and said it was enough. He said he would visit their towns later. However, he promised to spend a day with Tiltu first. Tiltu looked touched and blushed. Graham and Graz then apologized. Arata turned to Tiltu and offered his hand. He said it was time to go. The 2 of them then flew away to another place. Tiltu said he looked cool. Arata laughed and said her words made him blush. His dream was to hold a big feast with all the tribes living on the island. Because of that, he felt very happy about what Gaius and Graham wanted to do. However, he had plans to go somewhere before that. The next day, Arata and Reina headed to the rugged mountains. Katima went with them. She said she was glad that she finally had the chance to invite them. Arata apologized because the visit had happened so late. Katima said it was fine since she was generous. As they continued climbing the mountain, Arata asked what kind of people the Alfir were. Katima said the question was a bit hard to answer right away. She began by explaining that the Alfir people worshipped the great spirits. Among them were high Alfir like her. They were very strong because they received blessings from those spirits. In other words, the great spirits were the most amazing beings on the island, and the Alfir who received their blessings were special. She looked proud as she said this. Arata understood one thing after hearing her explanation. The Alfir might have fought with the Divine Beast tribe because they said something proud like that. Curious, Reina asked what high Alfir were. Arata agreed it was a good question. Katima simply said that high Alfir were people like her. Reina then guessed that they were important leaders of the Alfir. Katima giggled and stood proudly again. Arata wondered what Reina meant by leaders. Reina explained by using elves as an example. Among elves, their royal family were called high elves. Arata had heard about them before. Reina continued to explain that if the Alfir and elves came from the same roots but worshipped different spirits, then Katima might be royalty. Arata came to that conclusion, but he still could not fully believe it. He could not picture Katima as royalty. Katima noticed his expression and asked what kind of look he was making. She said she was an important person, no matter how he looked at it. She explained that high Alfir grew strong because of the power they received from the great spirits. Their role was to protect the other Alfir. Because of that, ordinary Alfir could live safely on the island. In truth, they might be closer to warriors than royalty. Arata said that made sense. Putting that aside, he was surprised to learn that the Alfir lived in very high places. They had already climbed far up the mountains. As she guided them, Katima explained that this was because they were mountain people who respected the spirits of fire, earth, and darkness. She told them to keep following her because they were almost there. Arata followed her and remembered something. He and Katima could walk on roads like this for a long time without trouble. However, this kind of journey had been hard for Reina before. During that time, she had panted heavily and often stopped to catch her breath. He asked Reina if she felt tired. He even offered to carry her on his back. However, he became confused when he saw that she was not sweating at all and was walking along the rough road without any trouble. Reina noticed his reaction and asked what was wrong. Arata became flustered. He explained that they had been walking for quite a while, yet Reina still looked fine. Reina let out a sigh. She explained that she had traveled around the island like this many times. Because of that, her body had become stronger. She had also become better at controlling her mana. Arata asked why she mentioned her mana. Then he remembered that she could use body enhancement. Reina confirmed that this was the reason. Katima told them to keep moving because they were almost there. The two followed her and turned a corner. Soon they reached the village. Houses stood along the mountain cliffs themselves. Katima explained that this was the village where she lived. It was called the village of Alfir. Arata and Reina froze and asked if that was the place. Katima confirmed that it was her home, the village of Alfir. She explained that her tribe worshipped the spirits of fire, earth, and darkness. They believed that living in the mountains helped them feel closer to those spirits. She suggested that they visit the elder and his family first. Arata agreed. Reina then asked where the elder's house was. Katima pointed to the top of the mountain. Reina looked up and reminded them that she was an ordinary human. She said she would die if she fell. She also thought Arata would survive a fall. Arata asked her not to treat him as if he were not human. Soon villagers stepped out of their homes. They watched Arata and Reina with caution. Katima explained that the people of Alfir were gentle by nature. They were curious, but they were too nervous to come close. She said she was a brave warrior, so she had no fear of approaching others. She even said she could walk up to Arata's house by herself. Arata and Reina admitted they had not expected the people of Alfir to be so gentle. Katima asked why they were staring at her that way. She said she would head up first. With one strong jump, she grabbed a ledge on the cliff. She moved quickly from one ledge to another, then across the rooftops. Arata was impressed by her speed. Then a strong wind lifted her skirt, and he stared without thinking. Reina scolded him at once. Arata covered his face and apologized. Reina checked to see if Katima was still nearby. When she saw that Katima was already gone, she told Arata he could look again. Arata said he could not help it. Even so, Reina was amazed that Katima had climbed the tall cliff in one smooth climb. Arata understood why the people of Alfir called themselves the mountain folk. He asked Reina if she thought she could climb it too. She could not answer. Without hesitation, Arata picked her up in his arms. She became flustered and told him to wait. He asked her to wrap her arms around him. Blushing, she did as he said. He also felt his face grow warm. He became very aware of how close they were. The two froze and looked at each other. Reina looked away and said she would feel embarrassed if he stayed quiet like that. Arata apologized and said it was time to go. She nodded and hid her red face. After a short pause, Arata flew upward while holding Reina. They reached the top and were surprised by the house there. Arata had expected something grand from the elder's home, and he was right. The house was large and stood proudly at the peak. Meanwhile, Katima could not believe what she was seeing. She stared at them with a blank face and complained to Arata. She said she was confused. Arata asked why. She explained that she had learned men and women should act modestly when they were close to each other. However, Arata and Reina were not acting modest at all. They were standing too close. The two finally realized it, and Arata quickly set Reina down. Katima kept complaining. She made it clear that she was also speaking to Reina. She reminded her that girls should not lower their guard so easily. She told her to protect herself. She said her grandmother once told her that men were like wolves. If a girl was not careful, they would take advantage of her. Reina said she understood. Arata stayed quiet, though he disagreed a little in his mind. He did not deny that men could be like wolves. However, when he looked at Katima, he wished she would look at herself before saying that. Her abs, belly button and thighs were fully exposed. Katima noticed him staring. She asked why he was looking at her like that and if he had something to say. Katima told him to speak. She said she was someone who could listen to opinions and learn from them. After hearing that, Arata decided to be honest. He said that Katima's outfit looked a bit inappropriate. Katima froze and went silent. She slowly turned her head and asked Reina if she had heard what Arata just said. She repeated that men were like wolves. She could not believe her outfit was enough to make Arata look at her that way. Reina did not hold back either. She repeated what Arata had said and agreed that Katima's clothes made her look a bit inappropriate. Katima felt shocked. Flustered, she insisted she was not inappropriate and snapped at Arata. Arata did not know what to do. He looked at Reina with a worried face, silently asking for help. Reina understood and said she would talk to Katima. The girls then began discussing Katima's clothes and how her grandmother had advised her to dress that way. Arata covered his ears so he would not hear their conversation. 30 minutes later, Katima admitted that she had acted in a lewd way. Arata said he did not know how to respond. Reina told her it was fine. She explained that people wore different clothes in different places, so it was not completely Katima's fault. Katima realized that too. It really was not her fault. Reina confirmed it again. Arata agreed and reminded them that it was time to meet the elder. Katima agreed. The three of them entered the elder's house. Katima led them to a room in the back and called for the elder. She said she had brought Arata and Reina with her. Suddenly, a heavy pressure filled the room. Arata and Reina froze. The elder was only sitting there, yet Arata felt a strong sense of fear. He sensed power equal to Elga and the divine beasts. He guessed this was the strength of a high Alfir, one of the guardians of Alfir. Arata and Reina stood still and endured the pressure. Katima felt nothing and looked confused. She walked up to the elder and saw that he had fallen asleep. She shouted near his ear and told him he had guests. The elder woke up for a moment, then fell asleep again. Katima gave up and told them to make themselves at home until he fully woke up. Arata agreed. Soon Arata's shocked voice echoed through the house. He could not believe Katima was the elder's granddaughter. Katima confirmed it in a casual way. She said that was why she was kind of important. Arata and Reina remembered her saying a few hints before, but they did not expect her to belong to such an important family. Katima then explained that the elder was only her foster parent. They were not related by blood. Arata and Reina were surprised. Reina asked what had happened to her real parents. Katima said she had heard they died when she was still a baby. Reina felt sorry for asking. Arata noticed that Katima did not look sad and asked if she had ever felt lonely. Katima said she did not. Arata felt relieved. He thought he understood her feelings. When he first came to the island, he had felt completely alone. Later he met Reina, Luna, Elga, the divine beasts, Tiltu, and even Will. The days that followed were full of life as more people joined them. It felt like he had gained a second family. He never felt lonely when he was with them. He believed Katima must have found her own family as well. Arata then asked if the elder was important to her. Katima said yes and shared that the elder had always been kind to her. She added that her grandmother was a bit scary. Reina asked what she was like. Katima explained that her grandmother was very energetic. Since she was already old, Katima wished she were calmer. Suddenly a cold, chilling voice called out to Katima. It made her jump from her seat. She quickly said she was going out for a short walk and tried to run away. A woman suddenly appeared and told her she was not going anywhere. Katima called out to her grandmother and begged her to stop, but her grandmother quickly grabbed her by the head and pushed her to the floor. She used wrestling moves on her while scolding her for wandering off and taking too long to return. Arata and Reina watched in silence, confused by what was happening. Katima kept asking her grandmother to calm down. Then a loud cracking sound was heard from Katima's back and she fell to the floor, twitching. Her grandmother stood up and called her pathetic. She then turned to Arata and Reina and asked if they were the guests Katima had mentioned. She introduced herself as Saria. She said she might not look like it, but she was a bit older than they were. Katima complained about what she meant by a bit older and called her an old bag. Saria stepped on Katima's head to silence her. Arata felt confused because Saria looked about the same age as Katima. Saria noticed his puzzled face and laughed. She said this was normal for the Alfir people. Arata then asked about the elder who was sleeping. Saria said the elder had lived a very long life. While still on the floor, Katima added that the elder had been alive for 1,000 years. Saria suggested they speak with her instead, since the elder would not wake up easily once asleep. Before anything else, Saria asked if Reina was Arata's partner. Reina blushed and looked flustered. Arata scratched his head and said they were more like family. He tried to stay calm while speaking to Saria. Saria found his answer boring. She looked back at Katima and called her name. Katima asked what she wanted. Saria casually told her to become Arata's mate. Katima was shocked and asked what she was saying. Saria said Arata was a fine man. She reminded Katima that she was a lady and should think about giving her great-grandchildren. Katima protested and said Arata already had Reina. Saria said that did not matter and claimed that a proper lady should go after the best man, even by force. She suddenly moved behind Reina and grabbed her chest without warning. Reina was shocked. Arata felt flustered as well. At first, Saria acted as if it were nothing special. Then she realized Reina's chest was larger and firmer than she expected. She said it was not bad. Arata quickly turned away while Saria continued examining Reina. Reina's voice shook in embarrassment. She let out a moaning sound which stirred something inside Arata. Arata slowly walked toward the exit and apologized to them. He said he would return later. Saria angrily asked where he was going. Arata ran outside and stopped at the edge of a cliff. He tried to catch his breath. It had been too close for comfort. After seeing how Katima and Saria acted, he no longer believed that the Alfir people were gentle at all. He suddenly heard roars nearby. He looked up and saw several small dragons in the sky. He remembered that they had been around the island since the day he arrived. They seemed much weaker than Tiltu. Still, he admitted that he did not truly know how strong they were. He knew that Elga, the divine beasts, and Tiltu were powerful. Suzaku and even Will were stronger than them. But when it came to the other monsters on the island, he barely understood their true strength. To him, they all felt equally weak. He realized that this way of thinking was dangerous. If he kept looking down on every monster, something terrible could happen one day. He knew he had to fix this problem before it led to trouble. At that moment, one of the dragons noticed him and flew in his direction. He thought the dragon had chosen him as its prey. He prepared himself, ready to fight without holding back. But the dragon did not attack him. It flew past him and headed down toward the lower part of the mountain. He quickly remembered that people lived there. Soon screams rose from below. The dragon flew back into the sky. This time, it held a crying child in one of its claws. The child cried for help again and again. Arata froze in shock as he saw the child being carried away. Inside the house, the elder was still sleeping even while Katima was being thrown around by her grandmother. Meanwhile, Arata froze when he saw a child trapped in a dragon's claw. The child's family shouted in fear and begged the wyvern to stop. Arata knew he had to save her. He flew into the sky and chased the dragons. The flying creatures noticed him and tried to stop him with their fire breath. The flames hit him directly, but they were too weak to harm him. He came out without a scratch and punched one of the dragons, knocking it out of the air. The two remaining dragons tried to escape while still holding the child. Arata chased them closely. He ordered them to give the child back and kicked one of them hard. The dragon's claws loosened, and the child began to fall. Arata quickly caught her in his arms. She was in tears and could not answer him properly when he checked if she was safe. The last dragon tried to attack again, but one sharp glare from Arata made it panic and flee. Arata saw that it understood the gap in their strength. The child was amazed because she had never seen grand wyverns run away like that. Arata did not realize they were wyverns and not true dragons. He carried the child back to the ground. Her parents rushed to her and hugged her tightly. They were relieved to see her safe. Arata felt glad he had been fast enough to save her. One of the Alfir asked if he was the person Katima had brought with her. Arata confirmed it. The Alfir explained that in their tribe, friends were treated like family even without blood ties. They thanked him deeply for saving one of their own. When they all bowed their heads, Arata felt embarrassed. He said he had only done what anyone should have done, so there was no need to bow. The Alfirs admitted they had stayed hidden and only watched him because he was an outsider. They said they had been rude to him, yet he still helped them. Arata smiled. He said it was normal to be careful with strangers, so he was not upset. He added that Reina, the girl who came with him, would have felt the same way. The Alfirs said they once believed Katima only brought troublesome people, but they now saw that Arata was kind. Arata began to wonder how Katima lived among people who misunderstood her. The child he saved gently pulled on his shirt and thanked him. Arata patted her head and said he was simply happy she was safe. Just then Katima arrived and called out to Arata. She said the elder had just woken up. Arata noticed that she looked troubled. He thought something might be wrong. Arata went into the elder's house and first asked Reina if something had happened. He saw that she still looked embarrassed and was covering her chest while Saria stood beside her with a grin. Arata became curious about what had happened while he was gone. He only remembered Saria touching Reina's chest earlier. Reina glared at him, telling him not to pry. Saria told them to stop staring at each other and come sit down. They all sat in front of the elder, each on their own pillow. Arata quietly looked at the elder, who was silent. He felt tension in the air and wondered if the elder had something serious to say. Suddenly, the elder started snoring. Arata turned to Katima and asked if the elder had fallen asleep again. He was sure he heard him snore. Katima shouted into the elder's ear and told him to wake up. The elder jumped and looked around in shock. Katima sighed. The elder said her shout had scared him. Katima asked why he was sleeping again when he had just woken up. The elder said the danger had passed, so there was no reason for him to stay awake. Arata asked what he meant by danger. Katima explained that the elder had told her earlier to bring Arata back because there was danger. The elder laughed loudly while looking at Arata. He realized that Arata had saved his people and bowed to thank him. Arata felt confused for a moment, then understood that the elder was talking about the wyvern from earlier. The elder confirmed it. Katima looked confused and asked what they were talking about. Arata then explained what had happened outside. Katima finally understood why everyone had gathered around Arata earlier. Reina gave Arata a look that showed he had caused trouble again. Saria found it hard to believe that Arata had driven away a grand wyvern. Reina said they had seen the wyverns ever since they arrived at the village. She asked if the wyverns were always after the Alpha people. Saria said no. Katima sadly explained that they had not seen the great spirits lately. The spirits would usually come near the village to protect them. She thought the recent wyvern attack might be connected to that. Arata asked if wyverns did not usually attack like that. Katima said they normally did not. Sometimes one would stray from the flock, but that was all. The elder explained that the Alfir people worshipped the great spirits of fire, earth, and darkness. Because the spirits watched over them, they were able to live in peace. Katima said the wyverns rarely came in large groups like before because they knew the spirits would protect the village. She believed something must have happened to the great spirits. When Arata looked at her, he did not remember ever seeing Katima this worried. That showed him how important the great spirits were to the Alfir people. He decided to take action. He suggested that they visit the great spirits. Katima felt confused. Arata said it might help her feel better if she saw how they were doing. Katima lowered her head and said it would be disrespectful for her to visit their homes. She said she could not do that. Arata understood, so he decided to go alone. This shocked Katima. The elder quickly told him not to go. He said the places where the great spirits lived were dangerous. Saria agreed. She said the great spirits did not accept requests easily. She also said she would not be able to sleep if they got angry and killed him. Arata told them there was no need to worry. He walked to an open space and released some of his strong magical energy. The elder and Saria were shocked. Arata said he was strong enough to survive even if the great spirits attacked him. The elder and Saria stared at him. The elder clenched his fist and admitted that Arata might truly be that strong. He bowed his head and apologized for asking him to do this. He then asked Arata to check on the great spirits for them. Arata agreed with confidence. Soon after, Arata went to the tallest cliff nearby. He felt amazed by the wide view around him. He turned to Katima and asked if this was where the great spirit of earth lived. Katima confirmed it was. However, she asked in anger why she had come with him. Arata felt confused. He said he needed someone to guide him. Katima felt afraid that the great spirits would get angry at her. She fell to the ground and cried. She did not want them to hate her. Arata could not imagine that a whole tribe of the strongest beings on the island would turn against someone over something small like this. He told Katima she would be fine. Katima could not understand how he stayed so calm. Then Arata noticed that the great spirit of earth was not there. He asked what they should do next. Katima suggested that they move on to the next spirit. She pointed toward an active volcano. She said the great spirit of fire lived halfway up that mountain. Katima led the way by stepping carefully along the mountain ledges. Arata flew behind her. Along the way they met several wyverns, but Katima defeated them without trouble. When they arrived at the base of the raging volcano, the great spirit of fire was not there. Arata guessed that the two spirits were at the home of the last one, the great spirit of darkness. Katima thought the same. Before they left, Arata reached out and touched the flowing magma. Katima was shocked by what he did. After that they continued on their way. Soon they arrived at a deep rift valley. Arata looked down and saw only darkness. He could not see the bottom at all. He suggested that they move forward. Katima shook her head as her body trembled. Arata asked what was wrong. He said they could go down using his levitation magic. Katima looked worried and told him that magic could not be used at the dwelling of the great spirit of darkness. Arata asked if that was really true. He picked up a stone and threw it over the edge. He waited to hear it hit the ground, but no sound came. After a moment he understood what was happening. He began stretching and said they should keep going. Katima was shocked. She could not believe he was smiling before jumping. He showed no hesitation, and that made her even more afraid. Arata said they would never find the great spirits if they did not move forward. Katima said she would still die from a fall like that no matter how strong her body was. She glared at him while shaking in fear. Arata then realized something. Since he got his new body, he had felt less fear. He knew that feeling scared in this situation was normal. After thinking for a while, he decided to go alone. He told Katima to wait for him. Katima looked troubled. She clenched her fist and said she was an Alfir with a strong sense of duty. Because of that she would go with him. She opened her arms ready to be carried. She told Arata to hurry before she lost her courage. Arata felt glad when he heard that. He carried Katima in his arms and jumped into the dark valley. Katima began to regret her choice, but it was too late. Her scream faded into the darkness. As they fell, Arata asked if Katima was okay. She said she was fine, but she was more worried about how long they had been falling. Arata thought about what they could do. He understood that some kind of magic had trapped them. When Katima heard that, she gasped. She quietly said it was over for them. She had heard about this magic before. It was a powerful binding spell used by the Great Spirit of Darkness against people who had done wrong. It was called the Prison of Darkness. People said only one person had ever escaped from it. Arata asked how that person had managed to escape. Katima explained that the person already had the power of darkness. She had forced the exit open with her own strength. After hearing that, Arata smiled. He thought he might be able to do the same thing and force the exit open. He told Katima to hold on tight so she would not fall. He said he would use all his power for a moment. He took a deep breath. A white light suddenly surrounded his body. Because of the deep darkness around them, he finally saw the true color of his mana. Katima had said earlier that magic could not be used in the world of darkness, but that rule was not completely true. Arata focused on releasing his magic power. Until then, he had always held back without thinking, especially when facing living beings. This time, he chose to use his full strength. He clenched his fist and swung it forward. He decided to show his true power. His punch struck the darkness, and a strong wave of magic burst out from him, pushing the darkness away. Surprisingly, Arata's punch pushed the darkness away. A voice echoed through the fading dark, confused that her power had been blown away so easily. In an instant, the darkness around Arata and Katima disappeared. Arata looked down and realized they had been on the ground the whole time. They had not been falling as he first thought. He told Katima they were safe now. She still looked shaken. Arata looked up and saw that the bottom of the cliff was not very deep. Katima felt dizzy from the fall and asked if they had already reached the home of the Great Spirit of Darkness. Arata confirmed it and asked if she was alright. Katima said she was not okay in many ways, but she could stand at least. She looked down and said sadly that they had finally arrived at the dwelling of the Great Spirit of Darkness. She began to cry. The Great Spirit of Darkness was said to be the most frightening of all the spirits. Arata asked if that was true. Katima nodded. She explained that the Great Spirits of Fire and Earth interacted with the Alfir, but she had never seen the Great Spirit of Darkness. Because of that, she did not know much about her. Arata remembered that they had only come to check on the spirit out of concern. He did not think she would treat them with hate. Still, he said they should be careful not to upset her. Katima looked at him with doubt. She admitted she did not expect much from him, but she believed it was important to have that kind of goal. Arata said she was being harsh. Katima insisted she was not. Arata then asked what they should do next. Katima asked what he meant, since the only thing they could do was move forward. They continued on their way. As Katima led, Arata asked if they were heading in the right direction. She said probably because she could feel a spirit's power coming from ahead. Arata focused and tried to sense it too. He realized she was right. He felt something strange that was different from magic. It was also the strongest force he had felt on the island so far. He believed this was the true Great Spirit. Before they moved forward, Katima reminded him again to never disrespect the Great Spirit of Darkness. Arata told her not to worry and said she could trust him. But when he thought about it, he realized he had blown away the darkness earlier. Katima screamed in fear when she remembered that. At that time, it was the only thing Arata could do. He believed everything would turn out fine. Katima quietly wiped away a tear. Arata then said his back had been tingling for a while, but they kept walking. Soon they reached a place that looked like a sanctuary. Arata saw someone standing at the entrance. Katima began to sweat because she believed the woman was the Great Spirit of Darkness. The woman had long black hair, long ears, and straight horns. She crossed her arms and stared at them with cold eyes. She was the Great Spirit of Darkness, Cheryl. Arata felt the heavy pressure around her and knew she was angry. Cheryl glanced to the side. Spears made of darkness appeared and surrounded Arata and Katima. Katima panicked. She blamed Arata and said she had expected nothing from him. Arata said she was being too harsh. Katima insisted she was not, and angrily told him to apologize to the Great Spirit at once. While the two argued, Cheryl finally spoke. She asked Arata why he broke the barrier she had worked hard to cast and why he came all that way. Arata was surprised when her voice echoed inside his head. Cheryl said she was ready to fight if that was his goal. However, she was busy dealing with other people, so she wanted to end things quickly. A spear suddenly flew toward Arata and Katima. From the way it moved, Arata knew it would miss him, so he stayed still. This surprised Cheryl. She asked if he saw the attack, and he said he did. To test him, Cheryl threw another spear. This time, it aimed at Katima. Arata quickly stepped in and caught the dark spear with his bare hand before it could reach her. Katima felt cold sweat run down her back as the spear's tip stopped just a few millimeters from her left eye. Arata glared at Cheryl and said the spear would have hit Katima if he had not stopped it. Cheryl admitted it would have, but she said it was fine since he blocked it. Anger rose from Arata. He said it was not fine at all. More spears began to move toward them. Arata used his speed to destroy every spear heading for Katima. He left one alone because it would miss. However, he noticed that the ground where a spear landed turned black and began to erode. He felt uneasy when he saw that. Before Cheryl could attack again, Arata decided to explain. He shouted that they did not come to fight her. He lifted his right leg and stomped the ground. He asked her to listen to them first. The force of his stomp sent out a shockwave that destroyed the spears around him. Cheryl was surprised. She decided to hear them out. She already knew the girl with him was an Alfir, but she asked what he was. Arata felt relieved that she agreed to listen. However, in the next moment, he and Katima suddenly appeared right in front of Cheryl. Both of them were confused. Cheryl said she thought continuing the fight would waste time, so she told them to speak and explain what they wanted. Arata was still shaken by the sudden movement. Now that he had felt it himself, he remembered Reina saying that teleportation magic belonged to the realm of the gods. Humans were not supposed to use that kind of power. Yet Cheryl used it with ease. He began to think she might be one of the strongest beings on the island. At that moment, Katima introduced herself. Cheryl asked why they had come. Katima gathered her courage and explained their reason. The great spirits had always watched over them, but recently none of the spirits had appeared. Because of that, wyverns had started attacking the Alfir people. Even then, no great spirit had shown up to protect them. Katima said they became worried. They wondered if the spirits were facing a problem they could not solve. That was why they came. Cheryl was surprised. She could not believe they had traveled all the way to her home just to ask about that. Still, she understood their situation. She decided to ignore the fact that they had destroyed her prison of darkness. Katima felt relieved and let out a quiet sigh. Cheryl then confirmed that the great spirits of fire and earth were inside her home. Katima felt glad to hear that, however she also felt worried about what might have happened to them. Curious, Arata asked if there was a problem. Cheryl said it would be easier to show them. She told them to follow her. Arata and Katima followed Cheryl inside. The sanctuary looked grand. 2 gargoyle statues stood in front of staircases that split in 2 directions. Arata looked around and said the place felt like something from a dark fantasy. Cheryl noticed him staring and asked if he found the place strange. Arata admitted that he did. He said no man in the world would fail to feel excited in a place like that. Cheryl called him the worst and told him to die. Katima thought his words were awful. Arata asked what he had done wrong. Their cold stares hurt him. He felt the mood grow tense. He thought he needed to fix it. As they walked upstairs, he asked why the great spirits of fire and earth were staying there. He remembered that they had their own homes. Cheryl said that was true, but she explained that the problem started for a very pathetic reason. Arata and Katima wondered what that reason was. They soon reached an underground coliseum. A black sphere stood in the center. Arata wondered what the sphere was. He asked where they were. Cheryl explained that they were in a coliseum she had built to pass time. She usually made the monsters she caught fight in the arena. Arata felt uneasy and looked around. He asked where the great spirits of fire and earth were. Cheryl said they were inside the black sphere. She explained that she could not let those 2 fight in the open, so she threw them into the prison of darkness. Arata and Katima were shocked. Arata then understood why he had sensed a strong force coming from the sphere. After hearing this, Arata asked why the 2 great spirits were fighting. Cheryl thought for a moment and then smiled as if she realized something. She called Arata's name. Arata suddenly felt uneasy. Cheryl said Arata seemed unusual. She decided to place him inside the prison of darkness for a short time. She wanted him to persuade the 2 great spirits for her. With a wave of her finger, Arata appeared above the black sphere. He had no time to react. She waved her finger again and his body began to move on its own. He asked her to wait, but he had already fallen into the black sphere. Arata found himself surrounded by darkness. He thought about how frightening Cheryl was. She had not even explained why the 2 great spirits were fighting. He looked to his right and felt strong forces crashing into each other. He wondered if those were the great spirits. He began to walk in that direction. As he moved closer, he saw 2 huge beings punching each other in the face. He had finally found them. The 2 great spirits stopped fighting when they sensed Arata's presence. Even though they had been attacking each other, they both turned and glared at him. Arata felt shocked. He raised his hands and said he had no intention of fighting them.